The night Seraphina Vale walked back into the Valamont Foundation Gala, the entire city of Blackthorn held its breath. 6 months ago, they buried her alive with headlines and lies. Tonight, she returned wearing liquid silver and a smile that promised blood. You're watching the story of a woman once called insane, weak, and the powerful man who once crushed her. But tonight, everything will be reversed. Watch until the end. Like. And comment the name of the city you're watching in. I want to know how far this story has come. The rain came down like nails. Seraphina Vale watched it hammer the tinted windows of the SUV as the convoy slid through downtown Blackthorn, three matte black vehicles moving in perfect formation toward the marble awning of the Valamont Foundation building. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes lined with precision, hair pulled into a sleek knot that left no room for softness. The liquid silver gown clung to her like armor. She didn't look like someone who'd been destroyed 6 months ago. She looked like someone who'd crawled out of her own grave and learned to enjoy the view. You ready? Roman Vey's voice cut through the hum of the engine. He sat beside her, perfectly still, hands folded in his lap. No wedding ring, no nervous energy, just the kind of calm that came from knowing exactly how dangerous you were. Seraphina didn't answer right away. She let the silence stretch, watching the gala entrance grow closer. Valets in black ties scrambled beneath oversized umbrellas. Photographers huddled under awnings, cameras ready. Someone important was always arriving at these things. But tonight, they had no idea who was coming. I've been ready for 6 months, she said finally. Roman's mouth didn't smile, but something shifted in his eyes. Approval, maybe. Or recognition. He reached forward and tapped the driver's shoulder twice. The SUV glided to a stop directly beneath the brightest lights. The door opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and expensive perfume. Seraphina stepped out into the flash of 100 cameras before anyone realized who she was. It took 3 seconds. Then the whispers started. Inside, the ballroom looked like something out of a fever dream. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Tables draped in silk. Centerpieces dripping with white orchids. 200 of Blackthorn's most powerful people stood around pretending to care about underprivileged youth while secretly calculating net worths and political leverage. Seraphina moved through the crowd like a knife through water. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman in emerald green actually dropped her champagne flute. It shattered across the marble, and nobody moved to clean it up. They were too busy staring because Seraphina Vale wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be hiding, medicated, broken. That's what the headline said 6 months ago when Grant Mercer, tech billionaire, philanthropist, Blackthorn's golden boy, filed for divorce and leaked carefully edited stories about his troubled wife to every major outlet in the city. Unstable, paranoid, refusing treatment. The narrative was airtight. By the time the ink dried on the separation papers, Seraphina had been erased from polite society like a typo, and she'd let them think it worked. Roman stayed 2 steps behind her, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He didn't need to do anything. His presence was the message. Everyone in this room knew his name, Roman Vey, the man federal prosecutors had been chasing for a decade without ever making anything stick. Import-export, they said. Consulting, his lawyers claimed. But the truth whispered itself through boardrooms and back channels. Roman Vey owned half the city's infrastructure, and the other half was too smart to ask questions. The fact that he was standing beside Seraphina Vale, publicly, deliberately, meant something had shifted in the ecosystem, and predators always noticed shifts. Across the ballroom, near the bar, Grant Mercer stood frozen with a glass of whiskey halfway to his lips. He looked good. He always looked good. Tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, silver cufflinks catching the light. 43 years old and aging like expensive wine. His second wife, Ivy, a 26-year-old influencer with 2 million Instagram followers, clung to his arm in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. She was laughing at something a city councilman said, her hand resting possessively on Grant's chest. Then she followed his gaze across the room and stopped laughing. Seraphina didn't walk toward him. She didn't need to. She simply stood there, 20 feet away, and let him see her. Let him see what 6 months of silence had built. Let him understand that she hadn't been hiding. She'd been planning. Grant's jaw tightened. He set the whiskey down with a deliberate click and leaned toward Ivy, whispering something. She nodded, smile brittle, and disappeared toward the restrooms. He straightened his tie, rolled his shoulders. Then he started walking. Roman shifted almost imperceptibly. Not stepping forward, just adjusting his weight, the kind of movement that made trained security personnel nervous. Seraphina touched his wrist lightly. "I've got this." Roman went still again, watching. Grant closed the distance with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent his entire life winning. He stopped just inside her personal space, close enough to smell her perfume, far enough to maintain plausible deniability if anyone was watching. "Seraphina." His voice was warm, public-friendly, the tone he used on quarterly earnings calls. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm sure you didn't. You look—" He paused, eyes scanning her face like he was searching for cracks in a foundation. "You look well." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them. Around them, the gala continued. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played something French and forgettable. But in the 3-foot radius surrounding Seraphina and Grant, the air felt pressurized. "I heard you've been staying out of the city," Grant said carefully, "taking time for yourself." "Is that what you heard?" His smile tightened. "I'm glad you're doing better." "Better than what, Grant?" The question landed like a slap. His expression flickered, just for a second, before the professional mask slid back into place. But Seraphina saw it. The crack. The thing he didn't want anyone to notice. He was afraid. "Listen," Grant said, voice dropping. "I don't know what you think you're doing here tonight, but—" "I'm attending a charity gala," Seraphina said smoothly. "Same as you. With Roman Vey." "Is that a question?" Grant's eyes flicked toward Roman, who stood motionless 10 feet away, hands still in his pockets, face empty of expression. When Grant looked back at Seraphina, something new had entered his voice, something sharp. "You have no idea what you're getting involved in." "Don't I?" "Roman Vey isn't—" Grant stopped himself, glancing around at the crowd, lowered his voice further. "He's dangerous, Sarah. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's promised, he hasn't promised me anything." Seraphina's smile was a blade. "That's the difference between you two." Grant's face went red. For a moment, she thought he might actually lose control. Might raise his voice, might let the mask slip completely and show everyone in this ballroom exactly what kind of man he was behind the TED Talks and charitable donations. But he didn't. Because Grant Mercer was a professional. He exhaled slowly, forced his shoulders to relax, and manufactured a concerned expression. "I'm worried about you," he said quietly. "That's all. Despite everything that happened between us, I still care about your well-being." It was a perfect performance. And 6 months ago, it would have worked. Seraphina would have second-guessed herself. Wondered if maybe he was right, if maybe she was overreacting, if maybe she really had been the problem all along. But that version of her was dead. "You don't need to worry about me anymore, Grant," she said. "You gave up that privilege when you told the entire city I was mentally unstable." His jaw clenched. "I never said—" "You didn't have to say it directly. That's the beauty of your approach. Anonymous sources. Concerned friends. Leaked medical records." She took a step closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out where those stories came from?" Grant's face went carefully blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." The string quartet finished their song. In the brief silence before the applause, Seraphina could hear Grant breathing, fast, shallow, the kind of breathing that came from panic dressed up as confidence. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "No," Seraphina agreed. "It's not." She turned and walked away before he could respond. Roman fell into step beside her without a word. They moved through the crowd toward the terrace doors, and this time, people didn't just stare. They parted, like water around a stone, like subjects before royalty, like prey making way for something higher on the food chain. Behind them, Grant stood alone near the bar, watching them go. And for the first time in 6 months, Seraphina felt something she'd almost forgotten. Power. Bum! The terrace was quieter. Rain misted down beyond the overhang, turning the city lights into watercolor smears. Seraphina gripped the stone railing, letting the cold seep into her palms. Her heart was hammering, adrenaline singing through her veins. She just walked into the lion's den wearing a silver dress and a smile, and somehow she was still standing. Roman joined her on the railing, pulling a cigarette from his jacket pocket. He didn't light it, just held it between his fingers, rolling it absently. "You didn't tell him," he said. "Tell him what?" "About Celia." Seraphina smiled. "Where's the fun in that?" Roman almost laughed. "Almost. You're enjoying this." "Shouldn't I?" "Most people who've been through what you have—" He stopped, reconsidering his words. "Most people want it over quickly, clean, painless." "I'm not most people." "No." Roman looked at her sideways. "You're not." Inside the ballroom, the gala chairwoman's voice crackled over the sound system, welcoming everyone to the evening's program. Polite applause, the clinking of silverware on crystal. Seraphina watched through the glass doors as the crowd settled into their seats. 200 wealthy people preparing to eat overpriced chicken and pretend they cared about children they'd never meet. Grant sat at a table near the front, Ivy back at his side. He was smiling, shaking hands, playing his part. He had no idea. "Celia should be here by now," Seraphina said quietly. "She is." Roman checked his watch. "Third table from the left, red dress." Seraphina followed his gaze and found her. Celia Arden, investigative journalist, bulldog with a press pass. She'd spent 3 months building the case that would detonate Grant's empire, cross-referencing offshore accounts, interviewing former employees, tracing shell corporations through 6 different countries. And the entire time, Grant had no idea she was coming, because people like Grant Mercer never thought about consequences. They thought about control. "How much does she have?" Seraphina asked. "Enough to bury him twice." Roman finally lit the cigarette, exhaling smoke into the rain. Fraud, embezzlement, bribery. The financial crimes alone will take years to untangle, but the recordings— He paused. "The recordings are what'll break him." Seraphina's recordings. The ones she'd made during the final year of their marriage, when she'd finally understood what Grant was doing, how he'd isolated her, gaslit her, convinced her therapist, his therapist, the one he'd recommended, to medicate her into compliance. How he'd used her family's foundation connections to expand his business empire while slowly erasing her from every board, every decision, every room that mattered. She'd recorded it all. Late-night phone calls where he bragged to business partners about manipulating city contracts. Arguments where he threatened her with involuntary psychiatric commitment if she didn't sign paperwork. Meetings where he discussed offshore accounts with lawyers who thought the office was empty. 6 months of evidence, stored on encrypted drives, handed over to Celia Arden 3 weeks ago. And tonight, the first domino would fall. "When?" Seraphina asked. "During the speech." Roman checked his watch again. 20 minutes. Seraphina's hands tightened on the railing. 20 minutes. That's all that stood between this moment and the systematic destruction of Grant Mercer's entire world. Part of her wanted to feel guilty. The rest of her wanted to watch him burn. "Second thoughts?" Roman asked. "No." "You can still walk away. We can kill the story. Celia won't like it, but—" "Roman!" Seraphina turned to face him fully. "Stop." He went quiet. "I know what this costs," she said. "I know what happens after tonight. I know Grant won't go down quietly. I know there'll be lawsuits and investigations and every news outlet in America camped outside my door. I know all of it." She took a breath. "And I'm still here." Roman studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded once, slowly, and flicked the cigarette into the rain. "All right then." They went back inside. The gala program droned on. Speeches about youth empowerment, video presentations with swelling music, a performance by a local children's choir that made half the room cry into their napkins while checking their phones. Seraphina barely heard any of it. She sat at Roman's table, a private booth near the back, deliberately removed from the main crowd, and watched Grant work the room between courses. He was good at this, shaking hands, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, making donors feel important, every movement calculated, every smile measured. Ivy stayed glued to his side, her role clear. Look pretty, laugh on cue, prove that Grant Mercer had moved on to someone younger, easier, less complicated than his first wife. Seraphina wondered if Ivy knew yet. Probably not. Women like Ivy didn't ask questions. They just enjoyed the ride until it stopped. At 10:47 p.m., the gala chairwoman returned to the podium. White hair, pearls, old money, and older opinions. She thanked the sponsors, congratulated the committee, and then paused, glancing down at her notes with a small frown. "We have an unexpected addition to tonight's program," she said carefully. "Ms. Seraphina Vale has requested a moment to address the gathering." The ballroom went silent. Not the polite silence of an attentive audience, the shocked silence of a bomb threat. Every head turned towards Seraphina's table. Grant's face drained of color. Ivy looked confused. Roman didn't move. Seraphina stood, smoothing her dress, and walked toward the stage. The crowd parted again. This time, nobody whispered. They just stared, trying to understand what was happening, trying to figure out if this was part of the program or the beginning of a disaster. She climbed the steps to the stage, took her position behind the podium, adjusted the microphone. The lights were brighter up here, hot. She could feel sweat beginning to form at the base of her spine, but her hands stayed steady. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear. "Good evening." Silence. "I want to thank the Valamont Foundation for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. Many of you know me. Many of you knew my family. My father served on this foundation's board for 30 years before he passed. My mother dedicated her life to the mission of empowering underprivileged youth." Seraphina paused, letting that land. "I grew up believing in that mission. I still do." Somewhere in the crowd, someone coughed nervously. "6 months ago, I disappeared from public life," Seraphina continued. "The city was told I was unwell, unstable, that I was receiving treatment for mental health issues that had plagued me throughout my marriage to Grant Mercer." She said his name clearly, deliberately. Grant sat motionless at his table, jaw clenched. "Those stories weren't entirely false," Seraphina said. "I was unwell, I was struggling, but not in the way the headlines suggested." The room leaned forward. "I was struggling because I'd spent 3 years being systematically convinced that I was losing my mind." Her voice stayed even, factual. "My husband, my ex-husband, used therapy, medication, and isolation to make me doubt my own reality. When I questioned business decisions, I was told I was being paranoid. When I noticed financial irregularities, I was told I was being emotional. When I tried to leave, I was told I was being hysterical." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "And I believed him," Seraphina said quietly. "Because that's what happens when someone you trust spends years teaching you not to trust yourself." She could see faces in the audience now, some shocked, some sympathetic, some calculating, wondering where this was going, wondering if they should leave before the fallout started. "But 6 months ago, I stopped believing him," Seraphina continued, "and I started listening to the recordings I'd made, the evidence I'd collected, the truth I'd been too afraid to face." Grant stood abruptly, his chair scraped against marble. Sit down, Mr. Mercer." The voice came from the side of the room. Celia Arden stood near the edge of the stage, holding a tablet, her expression grim. "You're going to want to hear this." Grant looked at her, looked at Seraphina, then slowly, mechanically sat back down. Ivy grabbed his hand. He pulled away. Seraphina gripped the edges of the podium. "Over the next 48 hours, a detailed investigative report will be published by multiple news outlets. It will outline systematic fraud, embezzlement, and corruption tied directly to Mercer Global Holdings, offshore accounts, falsified contracts, bribery schemes involving city officials and federal regulators." The murmurs turned into gasps. "The evidence includes financial records, email correspondence, witness testimony, and audio recordings." Seraphina's voice didn't shake. "Many of those recordings feature my ex-husband discussing illegal business practices. Some of them feature him threatening me with psychiatric commitment if I interfered with his operations." Someone screamed, or maybe it was just a sharp intake of breath amplified by shock. Either way, the ballroom erupted. People stood, phones came out, flashbulbs popped. Board members rushed toward exits. Lawyers started making calls. And through it all, Grant Mercer sat perfectly still, staring at Seraphina like she was a stranger. "I'm not here tonight for revenge," Seraphina said, raising her voice over the chaos. "I'm here because women like me, women who are gaslit, medicated, and silenced by powerful men, deserve to know they're not crazy. They're not broken. They're being systematically destroyed by people who profit from their silence. She paused, letting that settle. I was never broken, she said quietly. I was buried alive by people who needed me silent. The room went still again, not because they wanted to listen, because they didn't know what else to do. Seraphina looked directly at Grant. But I dug myself out, and now everyone gets to see what you buried. She stepped back from the podium and walked off the stage into absolute pandemonium. Security tried to control the crowd, but it was useless. Reporters swarmed. Donors fled. Politicians melted into the corners, suddenly very interested in their phones. Seraphina moved through the chaos with Roman at her side, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. Not possessive, just present. Grant tried to intercept them near the main doors. His face was white. Sweat beaded at his temples. Ivy was gone, probably in a bathroom somewhere, frantically calling her publicist. You just destroyed everything, he hissed at Seraphina. Everything we built, everything I... You mean everything you stole, Seraphina said calmly, while I was busy being medicated into compliance. Those recordings are inadmissible. My lawyers will... Your lawyers are about to be very busy defending you in federal court, Roman said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to Grant all evening. His voice was pleasant, empty, the kind of tone that made people nervous. I'd save your energy. Grant's eyes swung to Roman, fury and fear mixing into something ugly. You think you've won? You think this city will let someone like you... Oh, someone like me, Roman interrupted, owns half the infrastructure in this city. The other half is too smart to complain, so yes, Grant. I think I've won. Grant opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Seraphina, and for the first time she saw him understand. This wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was a transfer of power, and he was on the wrong side of it. I'll destroy you, Grant whispered. Seraphina smiled. You already tried. Then she walked out into the rain with Roman beside her, leaving Grant Mercer standing alone in the ruins of his empire. The SUV was waiting, door already open. Seraphina slid inside and Roman followed. The door closed, the convoy pulled away from the curb, and Blackthorn City exploded behind them. News vans screeched to a stop outside the Valamont building. Headlines started forming in real time. Social media detonated. Within 15 minutes, #Mercer Scandal was trending nationally. Within 30, federal investigators were being pulled out of bed. Inside the SUV, Seraphina stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. You all right? Roman asked. She thought about it, really thought about it. 6 months ago, she would have said no. 6 months ago, she was drowning, medicated, isolated, convinced she was the problem. Tonight, she'd just publicly detonated the life of the man who tried to bury her, and she felt nothing but relief. Yeah, she said quietly. I'm all right. Roman nodded, didn't push, just sat there beside her as the convoy drove north, away from the chaos, toward the safe house on the coast, where they'd been staying for the past month. Seraphina leaned her head back against the leather seat, closing her eyes. She could still hear the ballroom exploding, still see Grant's face when he realized what was happening, still feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes watching her walk off that stage. But underneath all of it, underneath the adrenaline and fear and exhaustion, she felt something else. Freedom. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. They didn't speak again until the SUV pulled through the gates of the coastal estate an hour later. Rain had turned to mist. The ocean roared somewhere in the darkness beyond the house. Inside, the fire was already going. Roman's people had prepared everything. Seraphina kicked off her heels in the entryway, leaving them scattered on the marble. The silver dress suddenly felt like too much, too tight, too bright. She wanted sweatpants and silence. Roman poured 2 glasses of whiskey in the study, handed her one without asking. They stood by the windows, watching the mist roll across the cliffs. Celia called, Roman said after a long silence. The story's live. Every major outlet picked it up. AP, Reuters, Times, Journal, federal prosecutors issued a statement an hour ago. They're moving fast. How fast? Warrants by morning, arrests by end of week if the evidence holds. Seraphina sipped her whiskey. It burned. It'll hold. Yeah. Roman's reflection watched her in the glass. It will. Another silence. You didn't have to do this, Seraphina said quietly. Help me. Hide me. Any of it. Roman turned to look at her directly. Yes, I did. Why? He considered the question for a long time, long enough that Seraphina thought he might not answer. Then he set his glass down and said very quietly, Because you called me at 3 a.m. 6 months ago and asked for help, and you sounded like someone trying very hard not to drown alone. Seraphina's throat tightened. She remembered that phone call, remembered standing in her apartment, the one Grant's lawyers had generously allowed her to keep, staring at her phone, scrolling through contacts, trying to find someone who might believe her. Everyone else had believed Grant. Roman Vey, a man she had met exactly twice at charity functions, a man whose reputation terrified most people, was the only name she'd stopped on. And he'd answered on the second ring. You didn't know me, Seraphina said. No. You had no reason to trust me. I trusted that you were desperate enough to call me at 3 a.m. Roman picked up his glass again. That's usually a reliable indicator. Despite everything, despite the chaos and exhaustion and the fact that her entire life had just detonated on live television, Seraphina laughed. A real laugh. The kind she hadn't heard from herself in years. Roman's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. They stood there for a while longer, watching the mist and the darkness and the endless churning of the ocean below. Tomorrow, the city would explode. Federal agents would descend. Lawyers would mobilize. Grant would begin his desperate scramble to save whatever pieces of his empire he could. But tonight, in this house on the edge of the cliffs, Seraphina Vale was safe. And for the first time in 3 years, that was enough. She woke at dawn to the sound of her phone vibrating across the nightstand. 15 missed calls, 43 text messages, 6 voicemails. She ignored all of it and walked to the kitchen, where Roman was already awake, reading something on his tablet. Morning, he said without looking up. Morning. Seraphina poured coffee. Black. Hot. What's the damage? Mercer Global stock crashed before markets opened. Down 62% in pre-trading. Federal agents raided 3 different offices at sunrise. Grant's legal team issued a statement denying everything. His publicist quit. Roman finally looked up. And Ivy filed for divorce. Seraphina blinked. Already? Her lawyer released a statement 40 minutes ago. She's claiming she had no knowledge of any illegal activity and is cooperating fully with investigators. Smart. Self-preservation, Roman corrected. She knows a sinking ship when she sees one. Seraphina sat down across from him, wrapping both hands around her coffee mug. The kitchen was quiet except for the distant crash of waves. Morning light filtered through the windows, turning everything soft and gold. It felt surreal. 24 hours ago, she'd been preparing for war. Now the war was over. And somehow, she'd survived. Celia wants to interview you, Roman said, setting the tablet aside. Exclusive. She's offering editorial approval and control over what gets published. When? Whenever you're ready. Seraphina thought about it, about sitting down in front of cameras and microphones and telling the entire world what Grant had done, what he'd taken, what she'd had to become to survive him. Part of her wanted to hide, wanted to stay in this house on the cliffs forever and never face another reporter again. But the other part, the part that had spent 6 months building a case, collecting evidence, and preparing for this exact moment, knew she couldn't stop now. This wasn't just about her anymore. Tell Celia I'll do it, Seraphina said, but not yet. Give it a week. Let the federal case develop. Let Grant make his first mistakes. Roman nodded. And then? And then I'll tell them everything. Bitch. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m. Roman answered it, hand resting casually on the gun tucked into his waistband. But it wasn't a threat. It was a courier, holding a single envelope, cream-colored paper, expensive, the kind used for wedding invitations and legal threats. Roman brought it to Seraphina. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note on Grant's personal stationery. 3 sentences in his sharp, aggressive scrawl. This isn't over. You've made a mistake you can't take back. I will make you regret this. Seraphina read it twice. Then she handed it to Roman. He scanned the note, expression unchanging. Then he pulled out a lighter, held the paper over the kitchen sink and set it on fire. They watched it burn together. When the last corner turned to ash and floated down the drain, Roman looked at her and said very calmly, "He's going to come after you, legally, financially, maybe physically if he gets desperate enough. This is the part where it gets ugly." "I know. You sure you want to keep going?" Seraphina thought about Grant sitting alone in his penthouse last night, watching his empire collapse in real time. Thought about the recordings, the evidence, the years of manipulation and gaslighting and systematic destruction of her identity. Thought about the woman she used to be, the one who apologized for taking up space, and the woman she'd become, the one who burned mansions down and walked away smiling. "I'm sure," she said. Roman nodded once. "All right then." He pulled out his phone and made a call. When someone answered, he said only 4 words. "Increase security, triple shifts." Then he hung up and looked at Seraphina. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "you don't face it alone." Seraphina met his eyes. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, she understood something fundamental. Roman Vey wasn't her savior. He was her partner. There was a difference, and that difference was going to keep her alive. By noon, the media storm had reached Category 5. Every news outlet in America was running the story. Financial analysts were dissecting Mercer Global's corporate structure. Legal experts were speculating about federal charges. Social media had turned Grant into a hashtag. And in the center of it all, Seraphina's name kept appearing. Not as a victim, as a survivor. Someone had leaked partial transcripts of her recordings. Not the full evidence. Celia was too smart for that. But enough to give people a taste. Enough to show exactly what kind of man Grant Mercer was behind closed doors. The public response was immediate and brutal. Grant's sponsors started pulling out. Board members resigned. Investors demanded emergency meetings. The Blackthorn City Council announced an investigation into all city contracts involving Mercer Global. By evening, Grant's face was on every television screen in America, looking haunted and hollow as he walked into his lawyer's office surrounded by federal agents. Seraphina watched it happen from the living room of the coastal house, curled up on the couch with Roman beside her. "You did this," he said quietly. "We did this," she corrected. Roman's hand found hers in the space between them. Not romantic, not possessive, just there, solid, real. They sat like that for a long time, watching the city eat Grant Mercer alive, and Seraphina felt nothing but calm. That night, she dreamed about the penthouse, the one she'd shared with Grant during their marriage. 30 floors above Blackthorn, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, marble and steel and cold, perfect silence. In the dream, she was standing in the living room, watching Grant move through the space like he owned it. Because he did. He owned everything. The furniture, the art, the view, her. He turned to look at her, and his expression was the same one he'd worn 1,000 times. Patient, concerned. The face of a man who loved her too much to be angry. "You're not well, Sarah," he said gently. "You need help." And in the dream, just like in real life, part of her believed him. Part of her wanted to apologize, to be smaller, to stop asking questions and making noise and demanding space. But then the dream shifted. The penthouse shattered like glass, and standing in the ruins was a different version of herself. The woman in the silver dress. The woman who walked into the Valamont Gala and burned everything down. That version looked at Grant and said, "No, you need help." Then she turned and walked away, and the penthouse collapsed into dust behind her. Seraphina woke with a start, heart pounding, sheets tangled around her legs. The room was dark, quiet. She could hear the ocean through the open window. She wasn't in the penthouse anymore. She was free. And Grant Mercer, the man who'd spent 3 years trying to convince her she was broken, was sitting in a federal interrogation room trying to explain offshore accounts to lawyers who didn't believe a word he said. Seraphina lay back down, pulling the blanket up to her chin, and for the first time in years she fell back asleep without fear waiting in the darkness. End part 1. But as Seraphina drifted into dreamless sleep 50 miles north, Grant Mercer sat alone in his penthouse, staring at his phone. At the photographs his private investigator had just sent, pictures of Seraphina and Roman, entering the coastal estate, walking the cliffs, standing too close in doorways. Grant's finger hovered over the send button. One click, and those photos would be on every tabloid website in America by morning. One click, and he could destroy her credibility. Turn her into a scandal. Make the world forget about fraud and embezzlement and focus instead on the woman who left her husband for a criminal. His finger pressed down. And somewhere in the machinery of public opinion, a new bomb began ticking. The photographs hit the internet at 6:47 a.m. Seraphina didn't see them right away. She was in the kitchen, pouring her second cup of coffee, watching fog roll across the cliffs through the window. The house was quiet. Roman had left an hour earlier for a meeting in the city, something about restructuring supply chains, words that meant nothing to her but everything to the empire he ran from shadows. Her phone buzzed once, then again. Then it didn't stop. She picked it up, frowning at the screen. 32 notifications in the last 90 seconds. Text messages, missed calls, news alerts stacking on top of each other like a pileup on a highway. The first headline made her stomach drop. Seraphina Vale's secret romance with notorious crime figure Roman Vale. Below it, a photograph. Her and Roman on the terrace of this house, standing close, his hand resting on the small of her back. The angle made it look intimate, possessive, like they were lovers hiding from the world, which they weren't. But the internet didn't care about truth. Seraphina scrolled down. More photos. Her getting out of Roman's SUV outside the Valemont Gala. The two of them walking the cliffside path yesterday morning, shoulders almost touching. Roman lighting a cigarette while she laughed at something he'd said. Every single image had been taken with a telephoto lens. Professional grade. Someone had been watching them. Someone had been documenting everything. Her hand started shaking. The coffee mug slipped from her fingers and shattered across the tile floor, dark liquid spreading like blood. She didn't move to clean it up, just stood there, staring at her phone, watching her entire narrative collapse in real time. Because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about Roman Vale. And Roman Vale was the kind of man federal prosecutors spent careers trying to bury. The second headline confirmed it. Did Vale use mobster boyfriend to orchestrate revenge against ex-husband? Then the third, questions raised about credibility of Mercer. Accusations amid Vale's relationship with organized crime figure. Seraphina felt something cold settle into her chest. Not panic. Worse. Recognition. Grant had done this. Grant had hired someone to follow her, to photograph her, to wait until the exact moment her credibility mattered most, and then detonate it. She was still standing there, glass crunching under her bare feet, when Roman walked back through the front door. He took one look at her face and stopped. What happened? It wasn't a question. Seraphina held up her phone without speaking. Roman crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, took the phone from her hand, and scrolled through the headlines. His expression didn't change. Not surprise, not anger. Just the same cold calculation he always wore when something threatened his carefully constructed world. He handed the phone back. Get dressed. We're leaving. Leaving? Seraphina's voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Leaving where? Anywhere that isn't here. Roman was already moving toward the study, pulling out his own phone. They know where you are now, which means reporters will be at the gate within the hour. Possibly federal surveillance. Possibly worse. Worse? He stopped, looked at her. Grant Mercer just turned you into a liability, Seraphina, which means everyone who's afraid of me is now afraid of you. Do you understand what that means? She didn't answer, because she did understand. It meant she'd just become a target. They were in the SUV 15 minutes later, racing south along the coastal highway. Rain hammered the windshield. Roman drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw tight, eyes scanning every vehicle they passed like he was expecting an ambush. Seraphina sat in the passenger seat, phone clutched in her lap, watching the headlines multiply. Twitter was on fire. Reddit threads dissecting every photograph. Cable news panels debating whether her accusations against Grant were legitimate or part of some elaborate scheme orchestrated by Roman Vale. The narrative was shifting, and it was shifting away from her. They're saying I made it all up, she said quietly, that the recordings are fake, that you paid Celia to publish the story. Roman's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Celia's evidence is airtight. The federal prosecutors wouldn't have moved this fast if it wasn't. That doesn't matter anymore. Seraphina's voice cracked. All they see now is me and you, the unstable ex-wife and the mobster. It's the perfect story. It makes everything else look like a conspiracy. You're not unstable. I know that. The words came out louder than she meant, sharper. I know I'm not unstable, Roman, but the entire fucking country just watched me walk into a gala with a man the FBI's been investigating for a decade. What do you think that looks like? Silence filled the car. Heavy. Suffocating. Roman took an exit off the highway, winding through back roads Seraphina didn't recognize. Trees pressed close on both sides. No other cars, no witnesses. Where are we going? She asked. Safe house. Different one. Nobody knows about it except me and two other people. Roman, I need you to trust me. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. The tone he used when he was about to tell her something she didn't want to hear. Grant's not playing defense anymore. He's going on offense. These photos are just the opening move. Seraphina looked at him, really looked. The sharp line of his jaw, the scar above his left eyebrow. The way he held himself like violence was always an option, but never the first choice. Did you know, she asked, that someone was following us? I suspected. And you didn't tell me? I was handling it. Handling it how? Roman didn't answer, just kept driving, and Seraphina felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been holding together with hope and adrenaline and the desperate belief that she wasn't alone in this fight. You used me, she said. What? You knew they were watching. You knew Grant would try to discredit me, and you didn't tell me because... Her throat closed. Because you wanted to see what he'd do. That's not... Don't lie to me. Her voice was shaking now. Don't you fucking dare lie to me, Roman. I have spent 3 years being lied to by men who thought they knew better. Men who thought they were protecting me. So if you knew someone was photographing us and you didn't tell me, that means you made a calculation. You decided I didn't need to know. Roman's hands tightened on the wheel. I was trying to keep you safe. By keeping me in the dark? By not giving you another thing to be afraid of. The words came out harsh, louder than she'd ever heard him speak. You were barely sleeping, Seraphina. You were jumping at shadows. I wasn't going to add surveillance paranoia on top of everything else you were carrying. That wasn't your decision to make. Yes, it was. Roman's jaw clenched. Because you called me 6 months ago and asked for help. And helping you means making decisions you don't have the luxury of making yourself. The words hit like a slap. Seraphina turned to stare out the window, vision blurring. She didn't know if it was rain on the glass or tears in her eyes. Didn't care. They drove in silence for another 20 minutes. When Roman finally pulled up to a small cottage buried in dense forest, the rain had turned to mist. He killed the engine. Neither of them moved. I'm sorry, he said finally. I should have told you. Seraphina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Yeah, you should have, but I'd do it again. His voice was flat, honest, because keeping you alive matters more than keeping you informed. She looked at him, at the man who'd answered her desperate phone call at 3 a.m, who'd hidden her, protected her, given her the resources to build a case against Grant, who'd stood beside her at the gala while the entire city watched. And she realized something she'd been trying very hard not to think about. Roman Vey wasn't her partner. He was her handler. There was a difference, and that difference was going to get her killed. The cottage was smaller than the coastal house. 1 bedroom, kitchen barely bigger than a closet, furniture that looked like it came from a thrift store 20 years ago. But the windows were bulletproof, the doors reinforced steel, and the security system had more cameras than a casino. Seraphina sat on the sagging couch, phone in her lap, watching the media storm intensify. Roman paced near the window, making calls in a language she didn't recognize. Russian, maybe, or something Eastern European. His voice was low, controlled, but she could hear the edge underneath. He was worried. Roman Vey didn't get worried, which meant they were in deeper trouble than he was saying. When he finally hung up, she asked, "What now?" "Now we wait." "For what?" "For Grant to make his next move." Roman sat down across from her, elbows on his knees. The photos were designed to undermine your credibility, but they don't change the evidence. Celia's reporting is solid. The federal case is moving forward. Grant's still buried. Unless he buries me first. Roman's eyes met hers. He won't. How do you know? Because I won't let him. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made her angry. You can't protect me from public opinion, Roman. You can't stop every reporter or tabloid or Twitter thread that decides I'm a liar. You can't. She stopped, breathing hard. I thought I was taking my life back, but all I did was trade one cage for another. That's not. Yes, it is. She stood, needing to move, needing to do something other than sit still while the world ripped her apart. Grant controlled me with fear and medication. You control me with protection and secrecy. It's the same thing, just a different uniform. Roman went very still. I have never tried to control you. Then why didn't you tell me about the surveillance? I told you. Because you thought you knew better, her voice cracked. Because you decided what I could handle and what I couldn't. Just like Grant did. Just like my therapist did. Just like every single person in my life who claimed they were helping me. Silence crashed between them. Roman stood slowly, walked to the window, stared out at the rain-soaked forest. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. My father used to say that power is knowing when to pull the trigger and when to wait. He didn't turn around. I've spent my entire life learning that lesson. Watching, calculating, making decisions other people can't make because they're too emotional or too scared or too decent. Seraphina waited. I don't know how to do this any other way, Roman continued. I don't know how to help someone without controlling the variables. It's not. He stopped, started again. It's not because I think you're weak, Seraphina. It's because I've seen what happens when people I care about become collateral damage. The words hung in the air. People I care about. Seraphina felt something shift in her chest. Something she'd been carefully avoiding since the night he answered her phone call. Is that what I am? She asked quietly. Someone you care about? Roman turned to look at her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes weren't. Yes. One word. No elaboration, no pretty speech, just the truth. Seraphina crossed the room until she was standing in front of him, close enough to see the faint scar above his eyebrow, close enough to smell gunpowder and expensive cologne. I need you to stop protecting me, she said. I can't do that. Then I need you to start trusting me. Her voice steadied. I'm not fragile, Roman. I survived 3 years with Grant Mercer. I recorded him committing federal crimes while he was trying to have me committed. I walked into a ballroom full of people who wanted me gone and burned his empire to the ground. She took a breath. So stop treating me like I'm going to break. Roman's jaw worked. And if I can't, then we're done. The words came out harder than she meant, colder. But she didn't take them back, because she meant them. She'd spent too long being managed by men who thought they were saving her. If Roman couldn't see her as an equal, if he couldn't trust her with the truth, even when it was ugly, then she was just trading one prison for another. Roman held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right. All right? You want the truth? All of it? His voice was hard now, clinical. Grant's hired a private security firm, ex-military. They've been tracking your movements for 3 weeks. The photos were just phase 1. Phase 2 is character assassination. They're going to leak fabricated evidence that you've been in a relationship with me since before the divorce. Make it look like you orchestrated the whole thing as revenge. Seraphina's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They're going to try. They've already planted sources in 3 major outlets. By tomorrow morning, there'll be anonymous testimony from people claiming they saw us together months ago. Hotel receipts, restaurant reservations, text message screenshots. Roman's expression was stone. All fake, but convincing enough to muddy the waters. Jesus Christ. Phase 3 is legal. Grant's attorneys are going to file a countersuit, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. They'll demand discovery on every piece of evidence Celia used. They'll subpoena your phone records, your bank accounts, your therapy sessions. He paused. They're going to rip your life apart in court and make you defend every single decision you've made since you left him. Seraphina felt dizzy. She reached out, steadying herself against the wall. And you knew all this. I suspected most of it. Confirmed the rest 2 days ago. 2 days? She stopped. The night of the gala, you already knew. Yes. And you let me go up on that stage anyway. Because you wanted to. Roman's voice didn't soften. You asked me if you were ready. I said yes. Because you were. You are. But, listen to me. He closed the distance between them, hands on her shoulders. Grant Mercer is going to come at you with everything he has. Lawyers, private investigators, manufactured evidence. He's going to try to make you look like a scorned wife who seduced a criminal to destroy her ex-husband. And some people will believe him. Maybe a lot of people. Seraphina's eyes burned. Then what's the point if he's just going to... The point, Roman interrupted, is that the federal case against him is real. The evidence is real. Your recordings are real. Everything else is noise. And noise doesn't matter when the DOJ has you on tape discussing offshore bribery schemes. His grip tightened. So yes, the next few months are going to be hell, but at the end of it, Grant Mercer goes to prison, and you get to walk away. You don't know that. Yes, I do. His voice was certain, absolute. Because I've spent 30 years surviving people like Grant. And the one thing they all have in common is they don't know when to stop. They keep pushing, keep escalating, until they push themselves right off a cliff. He let go of her shoulders, stepped back. Grant's already falling. He just doesn't know it yet. Seraphina stared at him, at the man who'd just laid out her entire nightmare in clinical detail, who'd known for days and said nothing. And she realized he was right, not about keeping it from her. That was still bullshit. But about Grant. Men like Grant Mercer didn't know how to lose quietly. They thrashed, they lashed out, they burned everything around them trying to stay on top, which meant Grant wasn't done. Not even close. The call came at 2 a.m. Seraphina had finally fallen asleep on the couch, phone clutched in her hand when Roman's voice woke her. Don't move. She opened her eyes. Roman stood near the window, gun in hand, staring out into the darkness. Every muscle in his body was coiled. What? Someone just triggered the perimeter alarm. His voice was flat, empty. The voice of someone who'd done this before. 2 vehicles, possibly 3, came in from the north access road. Seraphina sat up, heart hammering. Police? No. Roman moved to the security panel, fingers flying over the touchscreen. Police would have announced themselves. This is something else. The monitors lit up, showing night vision footage from 6 different angles. And there, moving through the trees, were shadows. 4, maybe 5. Dressed in dark tactical gear, moving with military precision. Grant's private security firm. Get to the bedroom, Roman said quietly. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. Roman, now. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Seraphina ran. She made it to the bedroom just as the first window shattered. Glass exploded inward. Something heavy hit the floor. Seraphina slammed the bedroom door, turned the deadbolt, and pressed her back against the wall, breathing so hard she thought she might vomit. Voices outside, muffled commands, footsteps moving fast through the cottage. Then a gunshot. Then 3 more. Seraphina's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She dialed 911. Her fingers kept slipping off the screen. Come on, come on, come on. The call connected. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's breaking into... Seraphina's voice cracked. There are men with guns. I don't know where I am. A cottage? Forest. North of... Another gunshot. Closer this time. The 911 operator was saying something, but Seraphina couldn't hear over the blood pounding in her ears. She dropped the phone, backed further into the corner, stared at the door like she could will it to stay closed through sheer force of terror. Footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. The doorknob rattled. Seraphina stopped breathing. Seraphina, Roman's voice, hoarse. Open the door. She scrambled forward, fingers fumbling with the lock, yanked the door open. Roman stood there, shirt torn, blood on his hands. She couldn't tell if it was his. Gun still raised. Behind him, the cottage looked like a war zone. Broken glass, overturned furniture, dark stains on the floor she didn't want to think about. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head, unable to form words. Good. He grabbed her hand. We're leaving. Now. They ran. Out through the back door, into the forest, rain soaking them in seconds. Roman moved like he could see in the dark, pulling her through trees and underbrush, gun in his other hand. Seraphina's bare feet hit rocks and branches, but she didn't feel it. Couldn't feel anything except the terror singing through her veins. Behind them, voices shouted. Flashlight beams cut through the trees. They were still coming. Roman pulled her behind a massive oak tree, pressing her against the trunk. Put a finger to his lips. His eyes were different now. Cold. Predatory. The version of him she'd heard about but never actually seen. This was Roman Vey. The man federal prosecutors spent careers hunting. The man who made people disappear. He leaned close, breath hot against her ear. When I move, you run straight ahead. Don't stop. Don't look back. There's a service road half a mile north. Wait there. What about you? I'll find you. Roman, do you trust me? The question hung in the rain-soaked darkness between them. Did she trust him? The man who'd kept secrets, who'd let her walk into a trap without full information, who'd just killed, how many? Men to keep her alive. Did she trust him? Seraphina looked into his eyes and realized the answer was yes. Even after everything, even knowing what he was capable of, even understanding that his protection came with a price she was still learning to calculate. She trusted him. Yes, she whispered. Roman's expression softened for just a second. Then the mask slammed back down. Go. He moved out from behind the tree, gun raised, and Seraphina ran. She ran like her life depended on it. Because it did. Ran until her lungs screamed and her legs gave out and she collapsed on the muddy shoulder of a service road, gasping for air, rain hammering down so hard she couldn't see 5 feet in front of her. Behind her, the forest was silent. No gunshots. No voices. Nothing. Seraphina sat there in the mud, shaking violently, waiting for Roman to appear out of the darkness. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. He didn't come. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered, "What if he's not coming back?" The headlights appeared at 3:17 a.m. Seraphina scrambled to her feet, ready to run again, when she recognized the SUV. Black. Armored. Windows tinted so dark they looked like oil. The door opened. Roman climbed out. He was bleeding, a gash across his forehead, his shirt soaked through, definitely his blood this time, but he was alive. Walking. Moving toward her like nothing had happened. Seraphina's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the muddy road, and suddenly she was crying. Not scared crying, not sad crying, just crying. All the adrenaline and terror and exhaustion pouring out in ugly, choking sobs she couldn't control. Roman knelt beside her, didn't try to pick her up, didn't tell her to stop, just knelt there in the rain while she fell apart. When she could finally breathe again, she looked at him. "Did you? They're not going to bother us again." The way he said it made it clear. Final. Seraphina should have been horrified, should have asked questions, should have done something other than nod and let him pull her to her feet. But she didn't. Because somewhere between the gala and the cottage and tonight, she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd become complicit. They drove south, away from the cottage, away from whatever was left in those woods. Roman made 3 phone calls in that language she didn't understand, voice clipped and cold, giving orders, cleaning up. Seraphina stared out the window, watching the rain. "We need to disappear," Roman said finally. "Completely. New identities, different country. I have contacts in Shaw." "No." He looked at her. "No? I'm not running." Seraphina's voice was steadier than she expected. "That's what Grant wants. He wants me scared. He wants me hidden. He wants me to disappear so he can control the narrative." She turned to face Roman. "I'm done disappearing." "Seraphina, those men tonight were professionals. Grant's escalating. If we stay, then we fight back." She cut him off. "We don't hide. We don't run. We go public. We do the interview with Celia. We tell the entire story, including tonight, and we make it clear that Grant Mercer just sent armed men to kill his ex-wife." Roman's hands tightened on the wheel. "That's insane." Maybe. Seraphina smiled. It felt wrong on her face. Cold. But so is sending a hit squad after someone with federal investigators watching. Grant just gave us everything we need to bury him completely, so we're going to use it. Silence filled the car. Then Roman started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder. The kind of laugh that came from recognizing something true and terrible and perfect all at once. "You're out of your mind," he said. "Probably. This could get you killed." "He already tried that tonight. Didn't work." Roman shook his head, still laughing. All right. We'll do it your way." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He glanced at her. "But from here on out, no more secrets. You want the truth? You get all of it. Every piece, every ugly detail, no matter how much it scares you." Seraphina held out her hand. "Deal." Roman took it. His palm was rough, calloused, warm despite everything. They shook once, formally, like they were signing a contract written in blood. Celia Arden's apartment was in downtown Blackthorn, 7th floor of a converted warehouse building. They arrived at dawn, soaking wet, covered in mud and blood. Celia opened the door, took one look at them, and said, "Jesus Christ, get inside." She was small, 40-something, gray streak in her dark hair, the kind of woman who looked like she survived on coffee and rage. Her apartment matched, walls covered in papers, photographs pinned to corkboards, 3 laptops open on the dining table. Roman collapsed on the couch. Seraphina stayed standing. "I need you to publish something," she said. Celia was already pouring whiskey into 3 glasses. "Figured as much, given the state of you." She handed one glass to Seraphina. "What happened?" "Grant sent men to kill me." Celia's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Tonight. A cottage north of the city. At least 5 men. Tactical gear. Roman." Seraphina glanced at him. Roman handled it. Celia looked at Roman, who stared back expressionlessly. She set her glass down very carefully. "Are they dead?" "They're handled," Roman said. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." Celia turned back to Seraphina. "You have proof? Photographs? Video?" "Security footage from the cottage, the 911 call. And," Seraphina pulled out her phone, opened the recording app. "I recorded the whole thing, from the moment Roman saw them coming until we got in the car." Celia's eyes went wide. "You—" "I recorded my marriage to Grant for a year," Seraphina said simply. "Recording has become a survival instinct." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Celia started laughing. "You're fucking terrifying, you know that?" "Yeah," Seraphina said. "I'm learning." Celia grabbed her laptop. "Send me everything. Audio, video, the 911 call. I need to verify it, cross-reference it, get legal to clear it. But if this holds up—" She stopped. "If this holds up, Grant Mercer just committed attempted murder. Federal prosecutors will add it to the indictment. He won't see sunlight for 20 years. How fast can you publish?" 48 hours. Maybe less if I push." Celia's fingers were already flying over the keyboard. "But you need to understand, once this goes live, there's no taking it back. Grant will come after you with everything he has. His lawyers will argue you staged it, that Roman's people were the aggressors, that you're lying about all of it." "Let him argue," Seraphina said. "I have proof." "Proof can be discredited, questioned, buried in legal motions." Celia looked up. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" Seraphina thought about the cottage, the shattered windows, the gunshots, running through the forest with Roman pulling her along. Thought about Grant sitting in his penthouse, probably right now, probably smiling, thinking he'd won. "I'm sure," she said. Celia nodded. "Then let's bury this son of a bitch." The story dropped 36 hours later. Attempted murder. Grant Mercer, accused of sending armed team to ex-wife's location. Below it, Celia had included everything. The security footage showing men in tactical gear breaching the cottage. The 911 call with Seraphina's terrified voice. Partial audio from her recording, enough to prove an attack happened without revealing where they went afterward. And statements from federal investigators confirming they were reviewing the evidence. The internet detonated. Mercer Global's stock, already in freefall, crashed completely. Trading was halted within an hour. The board of directors called an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Grant as CEO. His lawyers released a statement denying everything, calling it a fabrication, demanding their own investigation. Nobody believed them, because Seraphina had proof, and this time Grant couldn't gaslight his way out of it. By evening, federal marshals had issued a warrant for Grant Mercer's arrest. Attempted murder, conspiracy, witness intimidation. The city went wild. News helicopters circled Grant's building. Protesters gathered outside. Former allies deleted photos from social media. Politicians who'd taken his money suddenly couldn't remember his name. And through it all, Seraphina sat in Celia's apartment, watching it happen on 6 different news channels at once. Roman sat beside her, silent, his hand resting on the couch between them, not touching her, just there. "You did it," he said quietly. Seraphina shook her head. "We did it." "No." Roman looked at her. "You did this. I just kept you alive long enough to finish." She wanted to argue, to say it was teamwork, to give him credit. But the truth was simpler than that. She had done this. She'd survived Grant's abuse, collected evidence, built a case, gone public, survived an assassination attempt, and came back swinging harder. She'd done it. For the first time in her life, she'd fought back. And won. The knock on the door came at 11 p.m. Celia answered it, then stepped aside. 2 federal agents, dark suits, serious faces, the kind of people who didn't smile during working hours. "Ms. Vale?" The taller one held up a badge. "We need you to come with us." Seraphina's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Grant Mercer was arrested 2 hours ago. He's requesting to speak with you." Roman stood immediately. "Absolutely not. She's not going anywhere near—" "It's voluntary," the agent interrupted. "She doesn't have to come. But Mr. Mercer has indicated he's willing to cooperate fully with our investigation if she agrees to meet with him. 1 conversation, supervised, recorded." Seraphina stared at them. "He wants to make a deal." "We can't comment on that." "But he does." She looked at Roman. "He's trying to negotiate, using me as leverage." Roman's face was stone. "Tell him to go fuck himself." The agent's expression didn't change. "Ms. Vale, I understand this is difficult, but if Mr. Mercer is genuinely willing to cooperate, it could expedite the entire federal case. We're talking about a network of corruption that spans multiple agencies and corporations. If he gives us names, documents, testimony." The agent paused. "We could dismantle something much bigger than just his company." Seraphina's heart hammered. "And if I say no, then we continue building the case without his cooperation. It'll take longer, be messier, but we'll get there." "Don't do this," Roman said quietly. "You don't owe him anything." "I know I don't owe him anything." Seraphina kept staring at the agents. "But if I can end this, really end it, by sitting in a room with him for 20 minutes... She took a breath. "Then I'll do it." "Seraphina, I need to see his face." She turned to Roman. "I need to look him in the eye and watch him admit what he did. I need—" Her voice cracked. "I need to know it's over." Roman held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right, but I'm coming with you." The agent started to object. "Non-negotiable," Roman said flatly. "She goes nowhere without me. Those are the terms." The agents looked at each other. Then the shorter one sighed. "Fine, but you stay outside the room. Security will be present throughout." "Good." Roman's hand found Seraphina's. "Then let's go finish this. That's it." The federal building was downtown. Gray stone, sterile hallways, the kind of place where lives got systematically destroyed by paperwork and legal procedures. They put Seraphina in a conference room on the 8th floor. White walls, steel table, chairs bolted to the floor, a camera in the corner recording everything. Roman waited in the hallway outside with 2 agents who watched him like he might disappear if they blinked. Seraphina sat alone at the table, hands folded in her lap, trying to breathe normally. The door opened. Grant Mercer walked in. He looked awful. Expensive suit wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles under bloodshot eyes. He'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. The golden boy of Blackthorn City reduced to this: a man in federal custody wearing an ankle monitor under his perfectly tailored pants. He sat down across from her. Didn't speak immediately, just stared at her like he was trying to understand how they'd gotten here. Finally, he said, "You look good." Seraphina didn't respond. "I mean it. You look—" Grant swallowed. "You look healthy, strong. I'm glad." "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't pretend you care how I look." Her voice was ice. "You tried to have me killed 3 days ago, so whatever you're about to say, skip the part where you pretend to be concerned about my well-being." Grant's face twitched. That wasn't—" He stopped, started again. "Those men weren't supposed to hurt you. They were supposed to scare you, make you understand you were in over your head. By breaking into a house with guns? By showing you what Roman Vey actually is." Grant leaned forward. "Seraphina, I know you think I'm the villain here. I know the story you've told yourself. But Roman isn't protecting you. He's using you. He saw an opportunity to destroy me and he took it. You were just the weapon." Seraphina stared at him. At the man who'd spent 3 years gaslighting her, who'd convinced doctors to medicate her, who'd leaked private medical records to the press, who'd tried to erase her completely. And she laughed. Not a nice laugh. The kind that came from somewhere dark and final. "You really believe that, don't you?" she said. "You really think you're the victim here?" "I think we're both victims. Of him." "No, Grant." Seraphina leaned forward, matching his posture. "You're not a victim. You're a federal defendant facing 20 years in prison for crimes you actually committed. I have recordings of you discussing offshore bribery, falsifying contracts, threatening me with involuntary commitment. All of that is real. All of that is your voice, your decisions, your crimes." Grant's jaw clenched. "Those recordings were taken without my consent. They're admissible. Your lawyers already tried that argument. It failed." Silence crashed between them. Grant sat back, shoulders sagging. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, almost honest. "Why did you do it?" "Do what?" "Destroy me." He gestured vaguely. "You could have just left, taken the settlement, disappeared, started over somewhere else. But instead you—" He stopped. "Instead you burned everything down. Why?" Seraphina thought about the question, really thought about it. Why had she done it? Revenge? Justice? Self-preservation? All of those. None of those. "Because you tried to convince me I was crazy," she said finally. "And I needed to prove to myself more than anyone that I wasn't." Grant's eyes closed. "Don't call me that." "Seraphina." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I know you don't believe me. I know you think everything I say is manipulation, but I am genuinely sorry for what I did to you. The medications, the therapy, He swallowed hard. "I told myself I was helping you, that you needed structure, control, that I was protecting you from yourself. You were protecting yourself from being exposed. Maybe." Grant's hands were shaking. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I convinced myself I was helping when really I was just trying to keep you quiet. I don't know anymore. I don't know where the lie ends and the truth begins." For the first time since walking into this room, Seraphina felt something other than rage. Pity. Not forgiveness, never forgiveness, but pity. Because Grant Mercer, brilliant, powerful, untouchable Grant Mercer, had no idea who he actually was underneath all the lies. "The federal prosecutors want names," Seraphina said. "They think you'll cooperate if I ask you to." Grant looked up. "Will you? Ask me to?" "Depends. Are you actually sorry, or is this just another manipulation?" "I don't know." The honesty in his voice was startling. "I don't think I know the difference anymore." Seraphina stood. "Then figure it out. Because the only way you walk out of this with any dignity left is by telling the truth. All of it. Every name, every bribe, every illegal deal. You clean house completely." "And if I do?" Grant's eyes followed her. "What do I get?" "Maybe 20 years instead of life. Maybe a cell with a window. Maybe, if you're very lucky, you get to die knowing you did one decent thing at the end." She walked to the door, knocked once. The agent opened it immediately. Seraphina paused in the doorway, looking back at Grant one last time. "I was never broken," she said quietly. "I was buried alive by someone who needed me silent, but I dug myself out. And now you get to live with knowing that the woman you tried to destroy is the reason you're sitting in that chair." Grant didn't respond. Seraphina walked out, and the door closed between them with a sound like a coffin lid slamming shut. Roman was waiting exactly where she left him. He stood when he saw her, searching her face. "You all right?" Seraphina nodded. She wasn't crying, wasn't shaking, just tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight for so long you forgot what it felt like to set it down. "Let's go home," she said. Roman's hand found hers. "Where's home?" Good question. The coastal house was compromised. The cottage was a crime scene. Celia's apartment was temporary. Seraphina had nowhere that felt safe. Nowhere that felt like hers. She looked at Roman, at the man who'd answered her desperate phone call, who'd kept her alive through assassination attempts and media storms and her own unraveling, who'd lied to her, protected her, trusted her when she'd proven she could handle the truth. "I don't know," she admitted, "but wherever it is, I want you there." Roman's expression shifted. Something warm broke through the ice. "All right," he said. They walked out of the federal building together, hand in hand, into the cold Blackthorn night. And behind them, in a conference room on the 8th floor, Grant Mercer sat alone with federal prosecutors and began giving them names. Because in the end, that's what men like Grant always did. They saved themselves, even if it meant destroying everyone else first. End Part 2. But as Seraphina and Roman disappeared into the city, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street, or the woman inside with a telephoto lens, or the way she smiled as she uploaded the newest photographs, Seraphina and Roman holding hands, walking together like lovers, to an encrypted server. Grant Mercer wasn't the only one who'd hired private investigators, and the next phase of the war was about to begin. The photographs appeared in Seraphina's inbox at 4:32 a.m. She woke to her phone vibrating on the nightstand, not the guest room at Celia's apartment anymore, but a hotel suite Roman had secured under a shell company name. Neutral territory, anonymous, the kind of place where people disappeared when they needed the world to forget them for a while. Seraphina reached for the phone, eyes still blurry with sleep. Probably another news alert, another legal update, another... She stopped breathing. The email had no subject line, no sender name, just a string of numbers that looked like they'd been generated by an algorithm. And 12 attached photographs, her and Roman, leaving the federal building, walking hand in hand through downtown Blackthorn, getting into his SUV, standing close in the hotel lobby. Each image time-stamped, geotagged, professional quality. Someone had been following them. Again. But these weren't the tabloid shots from before. Angles designed to look romantic, intimate, scandalous. These were surveillance photos. Clinical, detached, the kind intelligence agencies use to build cases. Below the photographs, a single line of text. "You should ask him about Prague." Seraphina sat up slowly, heart hammering. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She read the message again. Then again. The words didn't change. "You should ask him about Prague." She didn't know what that meant, had no context, no frame of reference, but the way it was phrased, casual, intimate, like the sender knew she'd understand once she asked, made ice settle into her stomach. Roman was asleep in the chair by the window. He'd insisted on staying in her room, said it was safer. She'd been too exhausted to argue. Now he sat slumped against the leather, gun resting on his thigh, one eye probably half open even in sleep. Seraphina stared at him, at the man who'd kept her alive, who'd answered her call at 3 a.m. 6 months ago, who'd protected her through assassination attempts and media firestorms, who'd also lied to her about surveillance, who'd made decisions without consulting her, who'd killed men in those woods and never told her exactly how many or why. You should ask him about Prague. She didn't want to ask, because asking meant opening a door she couldn't close. Asking meant acknowledging that maybe, there were things about Roman Vey she didn't know, things that mattered, things that changed the equation. But she'd told him 2 days ago, no more secrets, no more protection through omission, so she had to ask, even if the answer destroyed everything. Roman, his eyes opened immediately. Not the slow blink of someone waking up, The instant alertness of someone who'd trained themselves never to be truly unconscious. What's wrong? Not a question, a statement, because he could read her face that quickly. Seraphina held up her phone. I got an email, anonymous, with photos of us from yesterday. Roman was on his feet in seconds. He crossed the room, took the phone from her hand, and scrolled through the images. His expression didn't change. Not surprise, not concern, just that same cold calculation she was starting to recognize as his default. When did this come in? He asked. 4:30. Maybe 20 minutes ago. Roman handed the phone back, pulled out his own, started making calls in that language she didn't understand, definitely Russian this time. She caught a few consonants. His voice was clipped, urgent. He paced to the window, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness of Blackthorn while he spoke. Seraphina waited, watching him, trying to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand kept clenching and unclenching at his side. He hung up, made another call, this one shorter, angrier. When he finally turned back to her, his face was carefully blank. My security team is running traces on the email. Shouldn't take long to... What's Prague? Seraphina interrupted. The question landed like a gunshot. Roman went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that came from training, from knowing that any movement, any flicker of expression could give away something you weren't ready to reveal. Where did you hear that name? His voice was too controlled, too careful. The email, below the photos. It said I should ask you about Prague. Seraphina stood, pulling the hotel robe tighter around herself. So I'm asking, what's Prague? It's a city in the Czech Republic. Roman. Seraphina, don't. She cut him off. Don't do that. Don't deflect. Don't manage me. We had a deal. No more secrets. So tell me, what is Prague? Silence filled the hotel room. Heavy. Suffocating. Roman walked to the minibar, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey despite the hour, and drank half of it in one swallow. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, empty. Prague was an operation 8 years ago, before I met you, before any of this. What kind of operation? The kind where people don't come back. Seraphina's stomach dropped. People you killed? People who needed to disappear. Roman drained the rest of the whiskey. There was a trafficking network operating through Eastern Europe, moving girls, children. The kind of operation law enforcement couldn't touch because too many politicians were involved, too many protected players. So you, what? Took them out yourself? Someone had to. And Grant knows about this? Seraphina's voice was rising now. Grant Mercer somehow knows about an illegal operation you ran 8 years ago? Apparently. Roman set the glass down with deliberate precision. Which means someone talked. Someone who was there. Someone who knows enough to use it as leverage. Leverage for what? Roman looked at her. Really looked at her. And in his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. To discredit the entire case against Grant, he said quietly. If they leak evidence that you've been working with someone who's committed multiple homicides, even justified ones, it undermines everything. The recordings, the federal investigation, all of it becomes tainted because your primary supporter is a killer. Seraphina felt dizzy. She sat down on the edge of the bed, hands gripping the mattress. But the evidence is real. The crimes Grant committed are real. That doesn't change just because it doesn't matter if it's real. Roman's voice was hard now, brutal. What matters is the narrative, and the narrative becomes unstable ex-wife teams up with international criminal to fabricate evidence and destroy innocent businessmen. That's the story. That's what a jury sees. That's what the public believes. No. Seraphina shook her head. No, that's not. We have proof. We have recordings that a defense attorney will argue were obtained through illegal surveillance. We have testimony from a woman who's publicly aligned with someone connected to multiple unsolved murders in Europe. We have... Roman stopped, exhaled hard. We have nothing that can't be ripped apart in court if they play this right. The room tilted. Seraphina stared at the floor, trying to process, trying to understand how everything could fall apart this quickly. Who sent the email? She asked. I don't know yet. Guess. Roman hesitated, then, Grant's legal team, or someone working for them. They've been building a counteroffensive. We knew it was coming. We just didn't know they'd go this deep. How deep? Prague was classified, buried under 6 layers of bureaucratic paperwork and international jurisdiction red tape. The only people who know about it are... He stopped. The only people who know about it are either dead or have very good reasons to stay quiet. Except one of them isn't staying quiet anymore. Apparently not. Seraphina looked up at him. Did you kill people in Prague, Roman? Yes. No hesitation, no justification, just the truth. How many? Does it matter? Yes. Roman's jaw clenched. 14. Over the course of 6 months, all of them directly involved in the trafficking operation. All of them guilty of crimes no court would ever prosecute. 14 people. Seraphina tried to wrap her mind around it. 14 lives ended by the man standing in front of her. The man who'd held her hand yesterday, who'd promised to keep her safe, who'd... Did you use me? The question came out quieter than she intended. When I called you 6 months ago, when you agreed to help me, was I just... Her throat closed. Was I just another operation? No. Roman crossed the room, kneeling in front of her so they were eye level. No, Seraphina. You were never an operation. You were... He stopped. You were someone who needed help, and I had the resources to give it, that's all. But you knew this could happen. You knew your past could come back and destroy me. I knew it was a risk. And you didn't tell me. I was trying to protect you. By keeping me in the dark? Her voice cracked. That's the same thing Grant did, Roman. The exact same thing. You decided what I needed to know. You calculated the risks without consulting me. She stood abruptly, needing distance. You made me complicit in your crimes without telling me what I was actually part of. That's not fair. Isn't it? Seraphina spun to face him. You let me believe you were just some businessman the feds couldn't touch. But you're not. You're a vigilante who's killed 14 people, and now Grant's lawyers are going to use that to destroy everything I've built. We can contain this. How? I have people, contacts. We can find whoever sent that email and what? Kill them too? The words came out harsh, bitter. How many bodies does it take before we're no better than Grant? Roman stood slowly. His face was stone. You don't mean that, don't I? Seraphina's hands were shaking again. 3 days ago, you killed at least 4 men in those woods. You came back covered in blood and told me they were handled. I didn't ask what that meant because I didn't want to know. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. And I let it happen because I was too scared and too grateful to question it. They were trying to kill you. I know that, she was shouting now, couldn't stop herself. I know they were trying to kill me, Roman, and I know you saved my life, and I know I should be grateful, but I can't... Her voice broke. I can't keep pretending that this is normal, that we're the good guys, that the ends justify the means. Because that's exactly what Grant told himself every time he destroyed someone. That's how it starts. Silence crashed between them. Roman stared at her like she had just driven a knife between his ribs. You're comparing me to him, he said quietly. I'm comparing what you've done to what he's done. And I'm trying to figure out where the line is. Because from where I'm standing, it's getting really fucking blurry. Roman's expression hardened. Fine. You want the line? Here it is. I have never hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I have never targeted innocents. I have never used my power to destroy people weaker than me for profit or ego. That's the line. That's the difference between me and Grant Mercer. But you've still killed people. Yes. And you'd do it again, without hesitation, if it meant keeping you alive. He stepped closer. So if that makes me a monster in your eyes, fine. But I'm the monster who answered your phone call when nobody else would. I'm the monster who gave you the resources to fight back. I'm the monster who's kept you breathing for the last 6 months. I didn't ask you to kill for me. You didn't have to ask. That's what protection means. Seraphina laughed, sharp, broken. Protection. That's what Grant called it too. When he was medicating me, isolating me, controlling every aspect of my life, he said he was protecting me. That's not the same. It feels the same. She was crying now, couldn't stop it. It feels like I traded one prison for another, one handler for another, one man making decisions about my life without my consent. Roman went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. Is that really what you think? That I've been controlling you? Haven't you? Seraphina wiped her eyes angrily. You decided not to tell me about surveillance. You decided how to handle Grant's security team. You decided which safe house, which route, which contacts to use. You've made every major decision for the last 6 months, Roman, every single one. Because you asked me to. I asked for help, not ownership. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Roman's face went blank, the mask slamming down so completely she couldn't read anything underneath. He walked to the chair, picked up his gun, checked the magazine with mechanical precision, and holstered it. You're right, he said flatly. I've been making decisions for you, treating you like someone who needs protection instead of someone who can protect herself. I apologize for that. His tone was professional, distant, like he was addressing a business associate instead of someone he'd... Seraphina's chest tightened. Roman, my security team will remain on duty outside. You're paid up in this suite for another week. After that, you'll need to make your own arrangements. He headed for the door. Celia has all the evidence files. She can coordinate with federal prosecutors directly. You don't need me for that. Wait, Seraphina started forward. What are you... I'm removing myself from the equation. Roman's hand was on the doorknob. He didn't turn around. You said you felt controlled, so I'm giving you back control. You don't want a handler? Fine. You don't have one. That's not... I didn't mean... Yes, you did. He opened the door. And you're probably right. Maybe I did use you. Maybe I saw an opportunity to take down Grant Mercer and I took it. Maybe protecting you was just a convenient excuse. I don't believe that. Doesn't matter what you believe. Roman finally looked back at her. His eyes were empty. What matters is you're free now. No more monster-making decisions for you. Good luck with the rest of it. Then he walked out, and Seraphina stood there in the hotel room alone, while the sun came up over Blackthorn City, and everything she'd built crumbled into dust. Dimmek. Celia showed up 2 hours later with coffee and rage. What the fuck did you do? She demanded, kicking the hotel room door closed behind her. Seraphina was still on the bed, still wearing the robe, staring at her phone. The email was still open. The photograph still loaded, the message still sitting there like a bomb waiting to explode. You should ask him about Prague. I asked him about Prague, she said dully. Yeah, I heard. Celia set the coffee down hard enough to slosh. Roman called me at 6 a.m., said he was pulling out, said you'd fired him, said I should take over as your primary contact moving forward. I didn't fire him. Then what did you do? Seraphina finally looked up. I told him the truth, that I felt controlled, that I couldn't tell the difference between his protection and Grant's manipulation, that I needed space to... Oh, Jesus Christ. Celia sat down heavily in the chair Roman had occupied all night. Seraphina, honey, I'm going to say this once, and I need you to really hear me. What? You just made the biggest mistake of your life. The words hit like cold water. Seraphina straightened. Excuse me? Roman Vey was the only thing standing between you and Grant's entire legal apparatus. He had resources, connections, protection you couldn't buy with 10 lifetimes of money, and you just threw him away because you got scared. I wasn't scared. You were terrified. Celia's voice was hard, unforgiving. You were terrified because you realized the man protecting you was just as dangerous as the man destroying you. And instead of figuring out how to live with that complexity, you panicked and pushed him away. He killed 14 people in Prague. Yeah, I know. I've known for 3 years. Celia pulled out a cigarette, remembered she couldn't smoke in here, and shoved it back in the pack. You think I didn't research Roman before I agreed to work with him on your case? You think I didn't know exactly what kind of man he was? Seraphina stared. You knew? Of course I knew. I'm an investigative journalist, not an idiot. Roman Vey has more blood on his hands than most serial killers. But here's the thing. Celia leaned forward. Every single person he's killed deserved it. Traffickers. Abusers. Corrupt officials who let innocents die because it was profitable. He's not a good man, Seraphina, but he's not a bad one either. He's something in between, and that's what you needed. I needed someone who wouldn't lie to me. No. Celia's voice softened. You needed someone who'd keep you alive long enough to win, and he did that. For 6 months, he kept you breathing while Grant threw everything he had at you. Surveillance, lawyers, assassins, media campaigns, and Roman stopped all of it. She paused. Until you told him to leave. Seraphina's throat tightened. He should have told me about Prague. Why? Would it have changed anything? Would you have trusted him less? Protected yourself better? Or would you have just spent 6 months terrified of the man trying to save you? The question hung there, and Seraphina didn't have an answer, because Celia was right. If Roman had told her about Prague on day 1, told her he'd killed 14 people, that he was exactly the kind of criminal the media portrayed him as, she never would have trusted him, never would have accepted his help, never would have survived long enough to bring Grant down. But now, 6 months later, after everything they'd been through, now the truth felt like betrayal instead of protection. What do I do? Seraphina asked quietly. Celia stood. You figure out what you actually want, because here's your situation. Grant's legal team now has leverage. They're going to leak the Prague story within 48 hours. When they do, every news outlet in America will run with it. Seraphina Vale's secret alliance with international killer. The federal case will get complicated. Maybe not destroyed, but definitely weakened. Can we stop them? Not without Roman. Celia's voice was brutal. His contacts could have traced that email, found whoever's leaking, shut them down before the story breaks. But you sent him away. So now we're flying blind. Seraphina pressed her palms against her eyes. I fucked up. Yeah, you did. Can I fix it? Celia considered. Maybe. If you call him, apologize. Explain that you were scared and said things you didn't mean. And if he doesn't answer, then you better pray the federal prosecutors have enough evidence to convict Grant without your credibility intact. Because once Prague goes public, you're done. The media will eat you alive. Grant's lawyers will use it to dismantle every piece of testimony you've given. And the court of public opinion will decide you're just as bad as the man you're accusing. Seraphina looked at her phone. Roman's number was still in her recent calls. She could dial it right now, could say she was sorry, could ask him to come back, could admit she'd been wrong, but her hands wouldn't move. Because part of her, the part that had survived Grant's gaslighting by learning to trust her instincts, was still screaming that something was wrong. That Prague wasn't just an old operation. That whoever sent that email knew exactly how to fracture her alliance with Roman. That maybe she was supposed to push him away. There's something else, Seraphina said slowly. What? The email. The way it was phrased. You should ask him about Prague, not, did you know about Prague? Not, Roman Vey is a murderer. Just ask him, like whoever sent it knew I'd find out and knew it would drive us apart. Celia frowned. You think it was intentional? A psychological operation? I think someone studied us, studied our relationship, found the exact pressure point that would make me question everything. Seraphina stood, pacing now. Grant's legal team is good, but they're not that good. This is something else. Then who? Before Seraphina could answer, her phone buzzed. Another email, same algorithmically generated sender. This time, only one attachment, a video file. Seraphina's hands were shaking as she opened it. The video was grainy. Security camera footage, timestamped from 6 months ago, the week after she'd called Roman. The location was unclear, some kind of office, expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city skyline. 2 men sat across from each other. One was Roman Vey. The other was someone Seraphina had never seen before. Older. Silver hair. Expensive suit. The kind of man who looked like he owned countries instead of companies. The audio was muffled, but she could make out fragments of conversation. Insurance policy. If Mercer goes down, we need... The wife is perfect. She doesn't need to know. Just keep her alive long enough. The video cut off. Seraphina stared at the screen. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. What was that? Celia's voice sounded distant. Seraphina, what did you just watch? But Seraphina couldn't answer because she'd just seen proof. Roman had been planning this from the beginning, not protecting her, using her. She was never his partner. She was his insurance policy. And everything, the safe houses, the resources, the protection, the careful nurturing of her trust, had been a long game, a con. Seraphina's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? Ms. Vale. The voice was cultured, smooth, male. My name is Victor Kozlov. I believe we should meet. Who? I'm the man in that video. Roman's employer, his handler if you prefer. A pause. And I think it's time you learned the truth about why you're still alive. The line went dead. Seraphina sat down slowly. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Celia was saying something, asking questions, demanding to see the video. But Seraphina couldn't hear her over the roaring in her ears, because she'd just realized something. Roman hadn't left because she'd hurt his feelings. He'd left because his mission was complete. Grant Mercer was destroyed. The federal case was built. The evidence was compiled. Seraphina had served her purpose, and now she was expendable. The knock on the hotel room door made them both jump. Celia moved to the door, peered through the peephole, and went pale. Seraphina! But before she could finish, the door burst inward. 4 men in tactical gear, professional, military-grade weapons, moving with the same precision as the team that had attacked the cottage. Except this time, they weren't trying to kill her. They were here to collect her. The lead operative stepped forward, showing credentials. Not police, not FBI, private security, high-end, the kind billionaires hired when they needed problems solved quietly. Ms. Vale, you need to come with us. Like hell she does. Celia stepped between them. You have no authority. We have authority from Victor Kozlov. He's requested Ms. Vale's presence for an emergency meeting. She can come voluntarily, or we can make alternative arrangements. Celia looked at Seraphina. Don't go. Call the real police. Call federal. It's fine. Seraphina's voice was empty, hollow. Because she understood now. This was always going to happen. From the moment she called Roman 6 months ago, this was the trajectory. She'd just been too desperate and too traumatized to see it. She'd thought she was escaping Grant, but she'd just walked into a different cage. I'll go, she said quietly. Seraphina, no. Call the federal prosecutors. Tell them everything. Tell them about the video, about Prague, about... She stopped. About all of it. What about you? Seraphina looked at the operatives, at the weapons, at the cold professional expressions. I'm going to find out the truth, she said. Then she walked out of the hotel room, flanked by armed men, into the cold Blackthorn morning. And behind her, Celia Arden stood alone in the doorway, phone in hand, trying to decide who to call first. But deep down, they both knew the same thing. Whatever Seraphina was walking into, she might not walk back out. The car was waiting downstairs. Black, armored, tinted windows. They put her in the back seat between 2 operatives. No handcuffs, no restraints. But the message was clear. This wasn't a request. They drove north, out of the city, into the same coastal region where Roman's safe house had been. Seraphina watched the landscape blur past, mind racing. Victor Kozlov, Roman's employer, Spatsem, which meant Roman had never been working alone. He'd been following orders, executing a plan someone else had designed. And Seraphina had been the centerpiece, the bait, the weapon, the perfect victim to destroy Grant Mercer. The car pulled up to an estate that made Roman's properties look like starter homes. Iron gates, manicured grounds. A mansion that belonged in European aristocracy, not the American coastline. They escorted her inside. The interior was exactly what she expected. Old money, art that belonged in museums, furniture worth more than most people's houses. And in the center of it all, sitting in a leather wingback chair beside a roaring fireplace, was Victor Kozlov. He was older than he had looked in the video. 70, maybe. Silver hair perfectly styled. Navy suit that probably cost more than Seraphina's legal fees. But his eyes were sharp, predatory. The eyes of someone who'd spent a lifetime playing chess with human pieces. Ms. Vale. He stood, offering his hand. Thank you for coming. She didn't shake it. I didn't have much choice. True, but I appreciate the cooperation nonetheless. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please, sit. Seraphina remained standing. Why am I here? Because you've reached a critical juncture, and you need to understand the full picture before making your next decision. What decision? Victor smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Whether to live or die, Ms. Vale. That's the only decision that matters now. The room went cold. Seraphina's mouth was dry. Are you threatening me? Not at all. I'm offering you a choice. Victor sat back down, steepling his fingers. You see, 6 months ago, you became a problem for several very powerful people. Grant Mercer was one of them, but he wasn't the only one. What are you talking about? Grant's corruption network extended far beyond his company. He was a facilitator, a money launderer, a connector between legitimate business and very illegitimate operations. When you decided to take him down, you threatened to expose dozens of people who preferred to remain in the shadows. Seraphina's stomach dropped. So you... What? You used Roman to control me? We used Roman to protect you. Victor's voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. Left to your own devices, you would have been killed in the first week. Grant's people, or ours, or any number of organizations that wanted you silenced, but Roman convinced us there was another way. Which was? Let you destroy Grant. Use you as a weapon against him, but control the narrative carefully enough that the collateral damage stayed contained. Victor leaned forward. And it worked. Grant is finished, his empire dismantled. The federal case built on evidence so airtight, even the best lawyers can't crack it. Mission accomplished. Except Prague. Seraphina's voice was shaking. Someone leaked that deliberately, to destroy my credibility. Yes. Was it you? Victor's smile widened. Of course. We couldn't have you becoming too powerful, Ms. Vale, too sympathetic. The public loves a victim who fights back, but they're uncomfortable with victims who ally themselves with killers. So we introduced complexity, made you question Roman, made you push him away, isolated you. Why? Because now you're vulnerable. Now you need us again, and this time you'll understand the terms. Seraphina's vision swam. She gripped the back of the chair to keep from falling. What terms? You have 2 options. Victor stood, walking to the window. Option 1. You continue with the federal case against Grant. You testify. You give interviews. You become the face of this prosecution. But you do it on our terms. You say what we tell you to say. You avoid certain topics. You protect certain names. And in exchange, we ensure the verdict goes the way you want. And option 2? Victor turned to face her. You disappear completely. We provide you with a new identity, substantial financial resources, safety for the rest of your life. But you never speak about Grant Mercer again, never testify, never give interviews. You become a ghost. And if I refuse both options, then you become a liability. Victor's voice was gentle, almost kind. And we handle liabilities permanently. The threat was clear, cooperate or die. Seraphina's mind raced. She'd fought so hard. Survived so much, collected evidence, endured assassination attempts, destroyed Grant's empire piece by piece, and now she was being told it was all orchestrated, all controlled, all designed to serve someone else's agenda. Where's Roman? She asked quietly. Roman has been reassigned. To what? Another operation, another problem. He's very good at what he does, Ms. Vale. You were fortunate to have his protection while it lasted. Did he know? Her voice cracked. Did he know you were going to do this? Victor considered. Roman knew the broad strokes. He understood that you were part of a larger strategy, but I don't think he anticipated... He paused. I don't think he anticipated becoming attached. Attached. Yes, Roman has a weakness for broken things. He likes to fix them. You were supposed to be another assignment. Instead, you became... Victor waved his hand vaguely. Something else. Which is why we removed him. Emotional compromise makes people unpredictable. Seraphina felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart. Something deeper, her sense of reality. Because if Victor was telling the truth, if every single thing that had happened over the last 6 months was orchestrated, controlled, designed, then she'd never actually escaped Grant at all. She'd just traded one puppeteer for another. I need time to think, she said. Of course. You have 24 hours. After that, we'll need your answer. Victor moved toward the door. My men will take you back to the hotel. Celia Arden is waiting for you. I'm sure she'll have many questions. Answer them carefully. He paused at the threshold. One more thing, Ms. Vale. Don't try to run. Don't try to contact Roman. Don't try to go to the authorities with any of this. We have eyes everywhere. And the moment you become more trouble than you're worth, he smiled. Well, you're a smart woman. I'm sure you understand. Then he left. And Seraphina stood alone in the mansion, surrounded by priceless art and luxury that felt like a mausoleum. The operatives appeared to escort her out. She walked like a corpse, numb, empty, because she'd just learned the worst truth of all. She'd never been fighting for freedom. She'd been fighting for the right to choose her cage. And now even that choice was being taken away. Ichi. The hotel room was exactly as she'd left it. Celia pacing by the window, phone pressed to her ear, arguing with someone. When she saw Seraphina, she hung up immediately. Jesus Christ, you're alive. What happened? Who was that? What did they... They offered me a deal. Seraphina's voice was mechanical. I can testify against Grant on their terms. Or I can disappear. Or I can die. Celia went pale. That's... Who the fuck are these people? Roman's employers. The people who've been controlling everything from the beginning. Seraphina sat on the bed. Grant wasn't the real enemy. He was just a target, a convenient villain to destroy while protecting bigger fish. And Roman? Roman was their agent, following orders, playing his part. Seraphina's hands were shaking again. He knew. The whole time, he knew I was being used. You don't know that. Oh! I know enough. She looked at Celia. I have 24 hours to decide, cooperate or die. Those are my options. Celia sat beside her. Then we go to the feds, right now. We tell them everything. Victor said they have eyes everywhere. The moment I become a liability, fuck what Victor said. Celia grabbed her shoulders. Seraphina, listen to me. You are not powerless. You have evidence. You have testimony. You have a voice. Use it. To say what? That I was manipulated by both sides? That everything I've done for the last 6 months was part of someone else's plan? Her voice cracked. Nobody will believe me, Celia. I'll sound exactly like what Grant said I was. Unstable, paranoid, broken. Then we make them believe you. How? Celia's eyes hardened. By going nuclear. We publish everything. The Prague video. Viktor Kozlov's name, Roman's role, the entire conspiracy. We flood every news outlet simultaneously, make it too big to contain, force everyone's hand. That'll get me killed. Maybe. Or maybe it'll keep you alive. Because if you're a public figure, if everyone knows your name and your story, killing you becomes too expensive, too risky, too loud. Seraphina stared at her. You're talking about burning everything down. I'm talking about the only play you have left. Celia pulled out her laptop. We have 18 hours until your deadline. I can have a story ready in 6. Get it published simultaneously across 12 platforms. By the time Victor realizes what's happening, it'll be everywhere. And then you pray the public outrage is loud enough to protect you, that federal investigators move fast enough to arrest Victor before he can retaliate. That Roman, she stopped. That Roman decides protecting you matters more than following orders. You really think he'll choose me over them? Celia's expression softened. I don't know, but I think he cares about you more than he was supposed to, and sometimes that's enough. Seraphina closed her eyes. 24 hours. That's all she had. 24 hours to decide if she was going to cooperate with the people who'd been using her. Disappear and live the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Or go to war with an enemy so powerful they'd orchestrated her entire 6-month nightmare without her ever knowing. All her options were terrible. All of them ended with some version of death. But as she sat there in that hotel room with Celia beside her and the entire weight of the world pressing down, Seraphina realized something. She'd been living half dead for 3 years with Grant. Medicated, controlled, erased, and she'd spent the last 6 months fighting to survive, to expose, to destroy. But she'd never actually been free, not with Grant, not with Roman, not with anyone. So maybe the only way to actually be free was to burn it all down, even if it killed her. "Do it," she said quietly. Celia looked at her. "You're sure?" "No, but do it anyway." Celia's hands were already moving over the keyboard. "This is going to get ugly." "Everything about my life is already ugly." Seraphina stood. "At least this time, I'm choosing the fire instead of running from it." She walked to the window, stared out at Blackthorn City. At the skyline she'd once loved. The place she'd called home before Grant destroyed it. Before Roman controlled it. Before Victor revealed the truth. Somewhere out there, Grant sat in federal custody, giving prosecutors names. Somewhere out there, Roman was on another assignment, protecting another broken thing. Somewhere out there, Victor Kozlov was playing chess with human lives and believing he'd already won. But they'd all made the same mistake. They'd underestimated Seraphina Vale. They'd thought she was a victim, a weapon, a tool to be used and discarded. They'd thought breaking her once meant she'd stay broken forever. But survivors didn't stay broken. They evolved. And Seraphina Vale was done being anyone's pawn. "How long until the story's ready?" she asked. 4 hours. Maybe 5. "Good." Seraphina turned from the window. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Sharp. Hard. Nothing like the woman who'd walked into the Valamont Gala. Nothing like the woman who'd called Roman at 3 a.m. 6 months ago. This version of herself was something new, something dangerous, something nobody had planned for. "When it publishes," Seraphina said, "I want to do a live interview, simultaneous, no edits, no filter, just me, talking directly to the camera, telling everyone exactly what happened." Celia looked up. "That's incredibly risky." "I know." "Victor will see it as a declaration of war." "Good." Seraphina smiled. It felt cold on her face. Wrong. Perfect. "Let's give him one." End part 3. But as Celia typed and Seraphina prepared for the fight of her life, neither of them noticed the small red light blinking in the smoke detector above the bed, or the encrypted signal transmitting every word they said to a server 300 miles away, or the fact that Victor Kozlov was already watching, already listening, already preparing his next move, because men like Victor didn't make threats. They made promises, and he'd just promised Seraphina Vale had 24 hours to decide. What he hadn't mentioned was that the clock had started 6 hours ago. The red light in the smoke detector blinked twice. Seraphina saw it at 11:47 p.m., 3 hours into Celia's frantic writing session. She'd been pacing, wearing a path in the hotel carpet, when her eyes caught the reflection. Most people wouldn't notice. Most people wouldn't think twice about a smoke detector doing its job. But Seraphina had spent 6 months learning to see threats in every shadow. She stopped mid-stride, stared at the ceiling. The light blinked again. Regular, rhythmic, too perfect to be random. "Celia." "Hang on, I'm almost done with the section about Victor's—" "Celia." Seraphina's voice was sharp. "Look up." Celia followed her gaze, squinted at the smoke detector. Then her face went white. "That's not... It's a camera." Seraphina felt ice flood her veins. They've been listening this entire time. The laptop screen seemed to glow brighter in the sudden silence. Every word they'd typed, every plan they'd made, every strategy they'd discussed, Victor knew all of it. Celia slammed the laptop shut. "How long?" "I don't know. Could be hours, could be days." Seraphina moved to the window, scanning the street below. 2 black sedans parked across from the hotel. Engines running, windows tinted. "We need to leave. Now! The story's not finished. Then finish it somewhere else." Seraphina was already grabbing her jacket, her phone, the small bag of essentials she'd learned to keep packed. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they realize we spotted the surveillance." "Where do we go?" Good question. Every safe house was compromised, every contact potentially monitored. Roman's resources were gone. They had no backup plan because Victor had been watching them build the first plan. Seraphina's mind raced through options, discarded them one by one. Then, "Your office," she said. "The newspaper building. Public space. Security cameras. Witnesses everywhere. They can't touch us there without making it obvious. The building's locked after midnight. You have a key? Yeah, but then move. They were out the door in 90 seconds. Took the emergency stairs instead of the elevator. Seraphina's heart hammered against her ribs as they descended 8 floors, footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. Every shadow looked like an operative, every sound like boots on metal. They hit the ground floor. Seraphina cracked the exit door, peering into the alley behind the hotel. Empty. Too empty. Something's wrong, she whispered. Everything's wrong, Celia hissed back. But we can't stay here. They ran, out into the alley, rain starting to fall again, cold and sharp. Seraphina's shoes hit puddles, splashing water up her legs. Behind them, the hotel loomed like a tomb they'd barely escaped. They made it 3 blocks before the car appeared. Not one of the sedans from outside the hotel. Something faster. A black BMW with tinted windows that came screaming around the corner, tires smoking on wet asphalt. Run! Seraphina shoved Celia toward a side street. They split up on instinct. Celia went left. Seraphina went right. The BMW had to choose. It chose Seraphina. She heard the engine roar behind her, getting closer. Her lungs burned, legs screaming. The street was deserted at this hour. No witnesses, no help, just empty storefronts and locked doors. The car pulled alongside her, window rolled down. But it wasn't Victor's operatives. It was Roman. Get in, he shouted. Seraphina stumbled, nearly fell, stared at him like he was a ghost. What? Now, Seraphina. The urgency in his voice overrode every question. She yanked the door open and dove into the passenger seat. Roman hit the gas before she'd even closed the door. They flew through downtown Blackthorn. Roman drove like he was trying to outrun missiles, weaving through traffic, running red lights, taking corners so sharp the tires screamed. Seraphina gripped the dashboard. What are you doing here? Saving your life. Again. I thought you were reassigned. I thought Victor lied. Roman's jaw was clenched. He lies about everything. It's what he does. Then why? Because I told him to go fuck himself. Roman glanced at her. His eyes were different, wild, desperate. Nothing like the cold calculation she was used to. I told him you weren't an asset, you weren't a weapon, and if he wanted to hurt you, he'd have to go through me first. Seraphina's throat closed. Roman, don't. He cut her off. Don't say anything yet. Just let me get you somewhere safe. There's nowhere safe. He's been watching us. He knows about the story. He knows we're going public. I know, that's why we're going nuclear first. Roman pulled the car into an underground parking garage, killed the lights. Killed the engine. They sat in darkness, breathing hard, while footsteps echoed somewhere above them. Where's Celia? Roman asked. I don't know. We split up. She was heading toward her office. Roman pulled out his phone. Made a call. Russian again. Fast. Clipped. When he hung up, he turned to face her fully. My people have her. She's safe. They're taking her to the newspaper building through a back entrance. By now she's probably already uploading the story. Your people? I thought you quit. I didn't quit. I went independent. Roman's smile was sharp, dangerous. Victor thinks he owns me, but the thing about building an empire in the shadows, you make enemies, and some of those enemies used to work for you. You're staging a coup. I'm correcting a mistake. His hand found hers in the darkness. 6 months ago, I agreed to help you because Victor convinced me it was the smart play. Controlled demolition of Grant Mercer. Minimal collateral damage. Clean operation. But it wasn't clean. No, because you weren't supposed to matter. His grip tightened. You were supposed to be another broken civilian looking for revenge. I was supposed to point you in the right direction and let you destroy yourself along with Grant. But you... He stopped. You didn't break. You got sharper, meaner. You learned how to survive people like me. People like you killed 14 people in Prague. Yes, and I'd do it again. But I wouldn't lie to you about it anymore. Roman's voice was raw. I should have told you about Prague, about Victor, about all of it. I didn't because I thought I was protecting you. But really, I was protecting myself from having to admit that you'd become... He didn't finish, didn't need to. Seraphina understood. She'd become someone who mattered to him, someone he couldn't use and discard. Someone he'd burn his entire life down to protect. Victor's going to kill us both, she said quietly. Probably. But we'll make it cost him everything first. Seraphina laughed. It came out broken. Half sob. This is insane. Yeah, welcome to my world. Above them tires squealed, voices shouted, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Roman checked his weapon. We need to move. There's a service tunnel that runs from this garage to the subway station 2 blocks over. From there, we can get to the newspaper building without being seen. And then? Then you publish the story. You do that live interview. You tell the entire world exactly what Viktor Kozlov did to you. He paused. And while you're doing that, I'm going to make sure he can't retaliate. How? Roman's smile was colder than winter. By giving federal prosecutors everything. Prague. Viktor's entire operation. Names, dates, bank accounts. Evidence that'll keep investigators busy for the next decade. He met her eyes. I'm burning it all down, Seraphina. Every bridge, every contact, every piece of the empire I spent 15 years building. It all ends tonight. You'll go to prison. Maybe, if I'm lucky. His voice was matter-of-fact. More likely, someone will kill me before the trial. Viktor. Federal agents, someone I betrayed 10 years ago, doesn't matter. What matters is you get out clean. No. Seraphina grabbed his arm. No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to sacrifice yourself like it's noble. We survive together, or we don't survive at all. Roman stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together. Together. They moved. The service tunnel was exactly as Roman described. Narrow, damp, smelling like rot and old water. They ran through darkness, Roman leading with a flashlight, Seraphina following so close she could feel his body heat. Behind them, voices echoed, getting closer. They hit the subway station at 12:43 a.m. The last train had left an hour ago. The platform was empty except for a homeless man sleeping against the wall. He didn't wake as they ran past. Up the stairs. Out onto the street. 3 blocks to the newspaper building. They made it 2 blocks before the gunshot. The bullet hit the brick wall 6 inches from Seraphina's head. Chips of stone exploded. She hit the ground on instinct, Roman's body covering hers. Move! He was already pulling her up. Go, go, go! They ran. More gunshots, silenced weapons making muffled coughs in the rain. Seraphina felt something hot graze her arm. Pain. Blood. She kept running. The newspaper building appeared ahead, glass and steel. Lights on in the 4th floor. Celia was up there. Safety was up there. They were 20 feet from the entrance when the second BMW cut them off. Roman shoved Seraphina behind him. Gun already out, aimed at the driver. The window rolled down. Not Viktor's operatives. Federal agents. Roman Vey, you're under arrest. The agent's voice was calm, professional. Put down the weapon. Not happening. Roman didn't lower the gun. Seraphina, get inside. Now. I'm not leaving you. So, go. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Seraphina ran for the entrance. Her arm was bleeding badly, head spinning. Behind her, Roman was shouting at the agents, negotiating, buying her time. She hit the doors, locked. Fuck, Seraphina pounded on the glass. Celia! Celia! Movement on the 4th floor, then Celia's voice over the intercom. Seraphina? Open the door! The lock buzzed. Seraphina yanked the door open and stumbled inside just as 3 more gunshots cracked the night air. She spun. Roman was down, on his knees, hands behind his head, federal agents swarming him. Their eyes met through the glass. He mouthed 2 words. Finish it. Then they dragged him away. And Seraphina stood there, bleeding, breathless, watching the only person who'd actually protected her get arrested in the middle of a rainy Blackthorn street. Yes, the elevator ride to the 4th floor took forever. Seraphina leaned against the wall, pressing her jacket against the wound on her arm. Not deep, probably wouldn't need stitches, but it hurt like hell and wouldn't stop bleeding. The doors opened. Celia was waiting, laptop in hand, face pale. Jesus Christ, you're shot. Grazed, I'm fine. Seraphina stumbled out. Is it ready? The story? Yeah, it's Seraphina, you need a hospital. Later, show me. They moved to Celia's office. The space was chaos. Papers everywhere, 3 monitors showing different news feeds. The laptop opened to a publishing platform. The story was titled The Puppet Master, How Victor Kozlov Orchestrated the Destruction of Grant Mercer Using His Ex-Wife as a Weapon. Below it, everything. The Prague operation. Roman's role, the surveillance, the video of Roman and Victor planning, Seraphina's testimony. Evidence compiled over 6 months. All of it. Every ugly truth. This goes live in... Celia checked her watch. 4 minutes. Simultaneous publication across 14 platforms. Once it's out, we can't take it back. Good. Seraphina sat down in front of the camera Celia had set up. Because I'm not taking anything back ever again. Celia hesitated. There's something you should know. While you were gone, I got a call. From Grant. Seraphina's head snapped up. What? He's been in federal custody, cooperating with prosecutors. He heard about Victor, about the Prague leak, and he... Celia swallowed. He said he wants to testify. For you. Against Victor. The room tilted. Grant wants to help me? He says Victor approached him 2 years ago, offered to help expand Mercer Global in exchange for certain favors. Money laundering, facilitating connections. Grant didn't realize how deep it went until it was too late. And when you filed for divorce, Celia paused. Victor saw an opportunity. Use you to destroy Grant before Grant could expose the whole network. Seraphina felt dizzy. So Grant is a lot of terrible things, but Victor made him worse. Pushed him. Encouraged the gaslighting. Suggested the medication. Even recommended the lawyers who leaked your medical records. Celia's voice was quiet. Grant's been trying to tell federal prosecutors this for a week. They didn't believe him until I sent them preliminary evidence tonight. Why would Grant help me now? Because he's drowning, and you're the only person who can corroborate his story about Victor. Without your testimony, he's just a desperate defendant trying to shift blame. Celia sat down. But with both of you accusing Victor, with evidence to back it up, the federal case becomes airtight. Seraphina stared at the camera, at her reflection in the dark lens. Grant Mercer, the man who'd destroyed her, who'd gaslit her into thinking she was insane, who'd tried to have her killed, that Grant Mercer wanted to help her. Not out of goodness, not out of guilt, but out of mutual survival. Enemy of my enemy. Where is he? Seraphina asked. Federal holding facility downtown. They can have him on video call in 30 seconds, if you agree. Seraphina looked at the clock. 2 minutes until publication. 2 minutes until her entire life became public knowledge. 2 minutes until Victor Kozlov learned she'd declared war. Set it up, she said. Celia's fingers flew over the keyboard. A video window opened. Grainy federal facility background. And then, Grant's face filled the screen. He looked worse than he had in that federal building conference room. Gaunt. Exhausted. The golden boy completely tarnished. When he saw Seraphina, something flickered in his eyes. Not love. Not even remorse. Recognition. They'd both been played by someone bigger. Sarah. His voice cracked. Seraphina. Don't call me that. I know I don't have the right, but I need you to listen. Grant leaned closer to the camera. Victor Kozlov has been pulling strings for years, longer than either of us realized. He didn't just use you, he used me. He built my company into what it became so he'd have a legitimate front for his operations. And when you became a threat, when you started asking questions, he convinced me you were the problem. You convinced yourself I was the problem. You're right, I did. Because it was easier than admitting I'd sold my soul to someone worse than me. Grant's hands were shaking, but I'm admitting it now. On record. To federal prosecutors. To anyone who'll listen. Victor Kozlov is the architect of everything that happened to you. And if we don't stop him together, he'll destroy us both. Seraphina's throat was tight. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. I don't deserve your trust. I don't deserve anything from you except hatred. Grant's eyes were wet. But I'm asking anyway, because we're the only two people who can prove what Victor did. Without each other, we're just victims pointing fingers. Together, we're witnesses. The clock hit 0. Celia's hand hovered over the publish button. Seraphina, decision time. Seraphina looked at Grant, at the man who'd tried to bury her, then at Celia. at the woman who'd believed her when nobody else would, then at the camera, at her own reflection. She thought about Roman, arrested downtown, about Victor, watching from his mansion, about 6 months of hell that had led to this exact moment, and she understood something fundamental. Revenge wasn't about making people hurt the way they'd hurt you. Revenge was about making sure they couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. "Publish it," she said. Celia clicked. The story went live across 14 platforms simultaneously. Within seconds, notifications started flooding in. Shares, comments, news alerts cascading across every monitor. Seraphina turned to the camera. "Hit record. My name is Seraphina Vale. 6 months ago, I called a man named Roman Vey at 3 in the morning because I was drowning and nobody else would answer. Tonight I'm going to tell you why I was drowning, who pushed me under, and who's been controlling the water the entire time." She talked for 47 minutes straight, told them about Grant, about the gaslighting, the medication, the manipulation, then about Roman, about Prague, about Victor, about being used as a weapon by people who saw her as nothing more than a convenient tool. She showed them the video, played the audio recordings, presented every piece of evidence Celia had compiled. And then she looked directly into the camera and said, "Victor Kozlov thinks he controls this city, thinks he controls me. But here's what he doesn't understand. You can't control someone who's already died once. And I died 3 years ago when Grant Mercer convinced me I was losing my mind. Everything since then has just been me crawling out of my grave." She paused. "Let that land. So here's my message to Victor. You want to kill me? Get in line. Grant tried. Roman tried, in his own way. You'll try. But I'm still here, still breathing, still fighting, and I will burn your entire empire to ash before I let you bury one more person the way you buried me." She hit stop. The silence in the office was deafening. Then Celia's phone exploded. Seraphina's phone. The office line. All ringing simultaneously. News outlets, federal investigators, lawyers, politicians, everyone scrambling to respond. Grant's face was still on the monitor. "Seraphina, don't." She cut him off. "Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Just do what you promised. Testify against Victor. Give them everything. And then spend the rest of your life trying to be better than what he made you." Grant nodded slowly. "I will." The video call ended. Seraphina stood. Her arm was still bleeding. Her head was spinning. Every muscle in her body screamed for rest, but she couldn't rest yet. Because somewhere in this city, Victor Kozlov was watching. Learning she'd gone nuclear. Realizing his carefully constructed operation had just been exposed to the entire world. And men like Victor didn't accept defeat quietly. Celia grabbed her arm. "Federal agents are on their way. They want you in protective custody immediately." "No." "Seraphina, no protective custody, no handlers, no more cages." She pulled away. "I've spent 6 months being protected, being controlled. I'm done with that." "Then what?" "Good question." Seraphina looked out the window. Dawn was starting to break over Blackthorn City, the skyline she'd once loved, the place that had destroyed her and rebuilt her into something new, something dangerous. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then instinct made her pick up. "Ms. Vale." Victor's voice, smooth, unruffled, like they were discussing business instead of mutual destruction. That was quite a performance. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession. Semantics. Either way, you've made things very complicated. A pause. "I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding." "We did. You were going to kill me. I was going to stop you." Victor laughed. Actually laughed. "I like you, Seraphina. I genuinely do. You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who also thought they could burn my world down." "What happened to them?" "They died. Badly." The amusement left his voice. "I'm giving you one chance, one opportunity to walk away. Recant the story. Say you were coerced, traumatized, not thinking clearly. I'll make it worth your while, financially, physically, whatever you need. And if I refuse, then you die. Tonight, before federal agents can move you into protective custody, before the story can gain traction, you'll become another tragic casualty of the Grant Mercer scandal. Suicide, probably. People will say you couldn't handle the pressure, that you were never stable to begin with. Seraphina's hands were shaking. You can't touch me. The world is watching. The world watches everything, Ms. Vale. And they forget just as quickly. Victor's voice hardened. You have 2 hours. Use them wisely. The line went dead. Seraphina lowered the phone, looked at Celia. He's coming for me. Then we get you out of the city. Right now. I have contacts in... No. Seraphina's voice was steady. No running, no hiding. I'm done with that. Then what? Seraphina thought about Roman, arrested, probably being interrogated by federal agents right now, giving them everything he knew about Victor, burning his entire life down to protect her. She thought about Grant, in federal custody, finally telling the truth, finally being useful for something other than destruction. She thought about herself, 6 months ago, broken, medicated, convinced she was insane. And she thought about herself now, standing in a newspaper office at dawn, bleeding, exhausted, alive. I'm going to Victor's mansion, she said. Celia's face went white. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only play he won't expect. Seraphina grabbed her jacket. He thinks I'll run, thinks I'll hide behind federal protection, but I'm not going to do what he expects anymore. You can't just walk into... Yes, I can, and I will. She looked at Celia. Call the federal prosecutors. Tell them where I'm going. Tell them if I'm not out in 1 hour, to come in guns blazing. Seraphina, this ends tonight, Celia. One way or another. Victor dies, I die. Or we both walk away and spend the rest of our lives waiting for the other shoe to drop. She moved toward the door. I'm done waiting. Twat. The cab dropped her at the gates of Victor's estate at 6:17 a.m. The driver had given her strange looks the entire ride. Woman in torn clothes, blood on her arm, heading to the most expensive neighborhood in Blackthorn. He'd asked if she needed a hospital. She'd told him to drive. Now she stood before iron gates, security cameras tracking her every movement. She pressed the intercom button. Static. Then Victor's voice. Ms. Vale, I didn't expect you to accept my invitation quite so literally. Open the gate. Are you armed? No. Are you wired, recording this? No. A pause. You're either very brave or very stupid. Both, probably. The gate swung open. Seraphina walked up the long driveway, dawn light breaking through trees. Birds singing. The estate looked peaceful, beautiful, like nothing evil had ever happened here. The front door opened before she reached it. Victor stood in the entrance. Same expensive suit. Same silver hair, same predatory eyes. But something was different now. Tension in his shoulders, tightness around his mouth. He was afraid. Not of her. Of what she represented. Chaos. Unpredictability. Variables he couldn't control. Come in, he said. Seraphina stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. They walked to the same room where he'd given her the ultimatum. The fire was still going, the leather chairs still positioned for conversation. Like nothing had changed. Everything had changed. Drink? Victor poured himself whiskey. No. Suit yourself. He settled into his chair. I assume you're here to negotiate. I'm here to end this. Ending things is my specialty, Ms. Vale. You should reconsider. Seraphina sat across from him. Her arm throbbed, head pounded, but her voice was steady. You made a mistake, Victor. Did I? You told me I reminded you of someone. Someone who tried to burn your world down and died badly. She leaned forward. You were wrong. I don't remind you of them. I remind you of you, before you became this. Before you started playing puppet master with people's lives. Victor's expression flickered. You don't know anything about me. I know you're scared. I know the federal investigation is already pulling threads. I know Roman's giving them everything. I know Grant's testifying. I know your carefully constructed empire is collapsing in real time. She smiled. And I know you brought me here because you're trying to figure out how to make me disappear without making it worse. Perhaps. Here's what you don't know. I called federal prosecutors before I came here. Told them exactly where I was going. Told them if I don't walk out of here in 1 hour to assume you killed me. To bring every federal agent in a 100-mile radius down on this estate. Seraphina checked her watch. That was 12 minutes ago, which means you have 48 minutes to decide if killing me is worth spending the rest of your life in federal prison. Victor's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Am I? They stared at each other across the fire. Two people who'd both been broken by the world, who'd both learned to survive by becoming dangerous, who'd both decided the only way to win was to burn everything down. What do you want? Victor asked finally. Immunity. For Roman. For me. Full cooperation deal with federal prosecutors. You give them everything, every name, every operation, every piece of evidence. In exchange, they don't charge you with attempted murder. That's suicide for me. Better than actual death, Victor laughed bitterly. You really think federal protection will save you? The moment I start talking, a dozen different organizations will want you dead. People more dangerous than me. People with longer reach. Then I'll deal with them when they come. But I'll deal with them alive. Free. Not hiding in your shadow. Seraphina stood. You have 45 minutes to decide. Cooperate and live. Or kill me and die. Those are your only options now. She walked toward the door. Seraphina. Victor's voice stopped her. Do you really think you've won? She looked back. I think I survived. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Victor's smile was sad, almost pitying. Survival is just the beginning. The hard part is living with what you had to become to survive. Seraphina felt those words hit deeper than any bullet. Because he was right. She'd survived Grant, survived Roman's lies, survived assassination attempts and federal investigations and media firestorms. But the woman standing in this mansion, she barely recognized her. I'll figure it out, she said quietly. Will you? I don't have a choice. She left Victor sitting by the fire, walked out of the mansion into the cold dawn. Her phone was already buzzing. Federal agents, Celia, news outlets, everyone scrambling for her attention. She ignored all of it, just kept walking down the long driveway toward the gates, toward freedom, toward whatever came next. Behind her, the mansion stood silent. Victor was still inside, making his decision, calculating his odds, trying to figure out if there was any way to win. But Seraphina already knew the truth. There was no winning. Not really. There was only surviving long enough to choose your own ending, and hers was just beginning. End Part 4. At 7:04 a.m., federal agents stormed Victor Kozlov's estate. They found him sitting in the leather chair, whiskey glass empty, gun resting on his lap. But he wasn't dead. He was waiting. When they asked if he'd cooperate, he smiled and said, I'll give you everything, names, evidence, operations spanning 3 decades. But I want to speak to Seraphina Vale first. One last conversation. No recording. No witnesses. The lead agent asked why. Victor's smile widened. Because she needs to know the truth about Roman, about Prague, about why I really helped her. And what truth is that? Victor leaned back, eyes glittering. That Roman Vey isn't the man she thinks he is. That Prague wasn't about justice. And that everything, absolutely everything, has been part of a much longer game. He paused. A game that's about to reach its final move. Seraphina stood outside Victor's estate, watching federal agents swarm the property like ants on a corpse. Black SUVs tactical gear. The machinery of justice moving with efficient brutality. Her phone buzzed. The lead agent, a woman named Sarah Chen with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, was calling. Ms. Vale, Victor Kozlov is requesting to speak with you. Seraphina's stomach dropped. I'm done talking to him. He says he has information about Roman Vey, about Prague. He's willing to cooperate fully, but only after he speaks with you. Alone. No recording. That's not happening. Ms. Vale, Agent Chen's voice hardened. Victor Kozlov has evidence that could dismantle criminal networks spanning 3 continents. Human trafficking, money laundering, political corruption at the highest levels. If he's willing to give us that information, we need to accommodate reasonable requests. Reasonable? He tried to have me killed. And we can charge him for that, after he cooperates. A pause. 5 minutes. That's all he's asking. You don't have to agree. But if this information concerns your safety, concerns Roman Vey, don't you want to hear it? Seraphina closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to let Victor rot in federal custody, to never look at his face again. But that word, Roman, hooked into her chest and wouldn't let go. 5 minutes, she said, and I want agents right outside the door. Done. Come. They put her in the same room. The fire had burned down to embers. Victor sat in his leather chair, hands cuffed in front of him now, 2 agents flanking him like sentries. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, the predator stripped of his power. Seraphina stood by the door, refused to sit. You have 5 minutes. Talk. Victor studied her face. You look like you haven't slept in days. 4 minutes, 50 seconds? Always so direct. I admire that. He leaned back, chains clinking. Tell me, Seraphina, what do you think Prague was really about? Roman told me. A trafficking operation. He killed 14 people to shut it down. He told you the truth, but not the whole truth. Victor's smile was thin. Prague wasn't just about saving trafficked women and children. It was about eliminating competitors, rival organizations that were cutting into my operations. The room tilted. What? Roman Vey has worked for me for 17 years. Every operation he's ever run, every person he's ever killed, has been in service of my empire. Victor's voice was conversational. Matter of fact. Prague was no different. Those 14 deaths? They cleared the way for my people to take over the trafficking routes. Roman dressed it up as vigilante justice, but it was just business. Seraphina felt ice flood her veins. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself, how does a man like Roman Vey operate for 17 years without being caught? How does he move through federal jurisdictions like smoke? How does he have resources that rival small nations? Victor leaned forward. Because I protect him. I clean up his messes. I make sure the right people look the other way. Roman quit working for you. He told me... Roman told you what I instructed him to tell you. Victor's eyes glittered. The moment you called him 6 months ago, I knew exactly how to use you. Roman didn't go rogue. He followed orders. Every safe house, every resource, every piece of protection he gave you, all of it was me. All of it was designed to control your destruction of Grant Mercer. Seraphina's hands were shaking. No. He cared about me. He burned everything down to protect me. Did he? Or did he make a very convincing performance because I told him to? Victor tilted his head. Think, Seraphina. When did Roman suddenly grow a conscience? When did the cold, efficient killer decide you were worth sacrificing his entire operation for? It was exactly when I needed him to, exactly when it served my purposes. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand the game before it ends. Victor's voice softened, almost pitying. Roman Vey is sitting in federal custody right now, giving investigators my name, my operations, making himself look like a hero who finally turned on his corrupt employer. But here's what he's not telling them. He's been stealing from me for 3 years, building his own network, using my resources to create a shadow empire. Seraphina stared. You're saying Roman was planning to betray you? I'm saying he already did. You were just the excuse he needed. Victor's smile was bitter. A sympathetic civilian to protect. A righteous cause to justify his rebellion. Roman played me almost as well as he played you. The words hit like bullets, each one tearing through the narrative Seraphina had built. The story she'd told herself about who Roman was, what he'd done, why he'd helped her. I don't believe you, she whispered. You don't have to believe me, ask him yourself. Victor gestured to the agents. He's being held 3 floors below us, federal holding cells. They'll let you see him if you ask. Agent Chen appeared in the doorway. Time's up. Seraphina didn't move, just stared at Victor, at the man who'd orchestrated her nightmare, who even now, in handcuffs, was trying to manipulate her. Why? She asked. Why tell me any of this? Victor's expression was unreadable. Because in another life, you could have been my daughter. You have the same instincts, the same willingness to burn everything down rather than submit. And I wanted you to understand... He stopped. I wanted you to understand that everyone lies, Seraphina. Even the people who save you, especially them. The agents pulled him up, started leading him away. Seraphina watched him go. Then she turned to Agent Chen. I need to see Roman Vey. Ochiska. The holding cells were in the basement, Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial cleaner and desperation. Roman sat alone in a cell at the end of the corridor. No handcuffs. He'd been cooperating. They brought him to an interview room, steel table bolted to the floor, chairs on either side, a camera in the corner recording everything. Roman looked like hell, bruises on his face from the arrest, exhausted, but his eyes sharpened the moment Seraphina walked in. "Are you hurt?" His first words. Not a greeting, not an excuse, just concern. "No." Seraphina sat down across from him. Agent Chen stood by the door, giving them space but staying close. "Victor talked." Roman's jaw tightened. "What did he tell you?" "That Prague wasn't about justice, that you've been working for him for 17 years, that protecting me was just part of your plan to betray him." She paused. "Is any of that true?" Silence filled the room. Roman stared at the table. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Raw. "Yes, some of it." Seraphina felt something crack in her chest. "Which part?" "I have worked for Victor for 17 years. Prague was about eliminating his competitors, not saving victims. I've done terrible things in his name." He looked up, met her eyes. "But protecting you was never part of a plan. That was real." "How do I know that?" "Because I didn't have to burn my entire operation to keep you safe. I could have walked away after Grant was destroyed. Could have let Victor handle you. Could have disappeared." His hands clenched on the table. "But I didn't. Because somewhere between your phone call and the Valamont Gala, you stopped being an assignment. You became—" He stopped. "You became the thing that made me want to be better than what Victor made me." Seraphina's eyes burned. "You still lied to me for 6 months. Yes? You killed people, not just in Prague, everywhere, for 17 years. Yes. And you used me. Maybe not the way Victor claims, but you still used me to justify your rebellion." Roman's expression was stone. "If that's what you believe, I won't fight it. But know this, every decision I made to protect you was mine. Not Victor's, not anyone else's. Mine." He leaned forward. "I am a terrible person, Seraphina. I have done unforgivable things. But caring about you, keeping you alive, that's the one decent thing I've done in 17 years. Don't let Victor take that away." Seraphina stared at him, at the man who'd answered her desperate call, who'd kept her breathing through 6 months of hell, who'd burned his empire down when he could have just walked away. And she realized something. It didn't matter anymore whether he'd started helping her for the right reasons. What mattered was what he'd become along the way. "Victor offered to cooperate," she said. "Give federal prosecutors everything in exchange for immunity. Don't let them take that deal." "Why not?" "Because Victor will give them names, evidence, enough to look cooperative, but he'll leave out the worst parts, the people he really protects, the operations that matter most." Roman's voice was urgent. "I can give them everything, the real networks, the actual power structure, but only if Victor doesn't get immunity first." "You're asking me to choose between you and him. I'm asking you to choose justice over expediency." He paused. "And yeah, I'm asking you to trust me one more time, even though I don't deserve it." Seraphina stood, walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. "Roman." "Yeah?" "If you're lying to me, if any of this is another manipulation, I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in the worst federal prison they have." "I know." "Good." She walked out, left him sitting there in that concrete room, and went to make a decision that would determine whether justice or politics won. Agent Chen met her in the corridor. "Well?" "Victor's deal is bullshit. He's going to give you names and evidence, but not the real networks, not the people who actually matter." "How do you know?" "Because Roman told me, and for better or worse, I believe him." Seraphina met the agent's eyes. "Give Roman full immunity. Let him testify. He'll give you everything Victor's holding back. Roman Vey has killed dozens of people over 17 years. We can't just— You can if you want to dismantle the entire operation instead of just cutting off one head." Seraphina's voice was hard. "Victor is smart, careful. He'll cooperate just enough to save himself while protecting the empire. Roman will burn it all down. Every contact, every operation, every secret Victor spent decades building." Agent Chen considered. This is your recommendation? This is my demand. Roman gets immunity or I recant every statement I've made. I tell the media I was coerced, that the evidence was fabricated, that Grant Mercer was right about me being unstable. Seraphina crossed her arms. You need my testimony to make the case stick. So you'll give Roman what he needs, or you get nothing. The threat hung in the air. Agent Chen's expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll talk to the prosecutors. But Seraphina, if Roman is lying, if he's playing us, then I'll be the first one to testify against him. Good. Agent Chen pulled out her phone, started making calls. Seraphina walked away. Out of the basement, up the stairs, out of the mansion, into the morning light. The sun was fully up now. Blackthorn City spread out below the estate, glittering and dangerous and beautiful. The place that had destroyed her and remade her. The city she'd burned down to save herself. Her phone buzzed. Celia. Where the hell are you? Federal agents won't tell me anything. I'm at Victor's estate. It's over. He's cooperating. And Roman? Seraphina hesitated. Roman's making his own deal. I don't know how it ends for him. Do you want it to end well? The question hit harder than expected. Did she want Roman to walk away free, after everything he'd done, after all the lies? I don't know, Seraphina admitted. I don't know what I want anymore. That's fair. Celia's voice softened. Come back to the office. We need to prep for the federal testimony, and you need sleep. Real sleep. Not whatever you've been doing for the last 72 hours. Yeah, okay. Seraphina hung up, started walking toward the gates. A car pulled up beside her. Black sedan, federal plates. The window rolled down. Grant Mercer sat in the back seat, also in federal custody, being transported somewhere. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Grant said, very quietly, I'm sorry for everything. Seraphina stared at him, at the man who'd gaslit her, manipulated her, tried to destroy her completely. I don't forgive you, she said. I know. And your apology doesn't fix anything. I know that too. Grant's eyes were hollow, but I needed to say it anyway. Before... He stopped. Before whatever happens next. What happens next is you testify. You give them everything on Victor. You spend whatever time the federal prosecutors decide is appropriate in prison, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to be a better person than you were. Seraphina leaned closer to the window. And if you ever come near me again, if you ever try to contact me or manipulate me or use my name, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what you did, every detail, every lie, every moment of abuse. Understood? Grant nodded. Understood. The car pulled away. Seraphina watched it disappear down the long driveway. And she felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even relief. Just emptiness. The kind that came after a war when you realized winning didn't feel like you thought it would. The federal testimony took 3 weeks. Seraphina sat in a windowless room for hours every day, answering questions. Lawyers on both sides dissecting every moment of her marriage to Grant, every decision she'd made with Roman, every piece of evidence she'd collected. They asked if she'd been coerced, if she'd fabricated anything, if her mental health had compromised her judgment. She answered every question with the same cold clarity she'd learned to weaponize. No, I was not coerced. Yes, the evidence is real. No, I am not mentally unstable. I was systematically gaslit by my ex-husband and manipulated by men who saw me as a tool. That doesn't make me unreliable. It makes me a survivor. The defense attorneys tried to rip her apart, asked about her relationship with Roman, about Prague, about whether she'd known she was working with a killer. Seraphina looked them in the eye and said, I knew Roman Vey was dangerous. I called him specifically because he was dangerous. Because sometimes the only way to fight monsters is to find a bigger monster who's willing to protect you instead of consume you. The courtroom went silent. Roman testified 2 days later, sat on the stand for 11 hours straight, giving prosecutors everything. Names, bank accounts, operations spanning 17 years. He implicated politicians, federal agents, business leaders, dismantled Victor's empire piece by piece with surgical precision. Seraphina watched from the gallery. Saw him take responsibility for Prague, for the deaths, for every terrible thing he'd done in Victor's name. When the prosecutor asked why he decided to cooperate, Roman looked directly at her. Because someone reminded me that survival isn't the same as living, and I wanted to try living before I died. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Grant Mercer was sentenced to 15 years for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Eligible for parole after 10 with good behavior. Viktor Kozlov was sentenced to life without parole for human trafficking, murder for hire, and racketeering. Roman Vey received full immunity in exchange for his testimony. No prison time. But his assets were seized, his empire dismantled. He walked out of federal court a free man with nothing but the clothes on his back. Seraphina wasn't there to see it. She'd left Blackthorn City 2 weeks into the trial, couldn't watch anymore, couldn't sit in that courtroom while lawyers debated the validity of her trauma like it was a technical problem to be solved. She went north, back to the coastal house that had been compromised. That had been part of Roman's network. That should have felt tainted. But somehow, standing on those cliffs with the ocean crashing below, she felt closer to peace than she had in years. So Roman found her 3 months later. She was sitting on the terrace, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over the water. Heard footsteps behind her but didn't turn around. "Celia told you where I was," she said. "Yeah." Roman's voice was hoarse, like he hadn't used it much lately. "She said you'd probably throw me off the cliff if I showed up. I came anyway." "Why?" "Because I owed you a real goodbye. The kind where I don't get arrested halfway through." Seraphina finally turned to look at him. He was different, thinner, older somehow. The dangerous edge that had always surrounded him like armor, gone, or buried so deep it didn't show anymore. He looked human, breakable. "You got immunity," she said. "I did. No prison time." "No prison time." Roman moved to the railing, keeping distance between them. "Federal prosecutors got what they wanted. Victor's entire network, 17 years of evidence. They're still making arrests. And you?" He stopped. "I don't know what I am. Free, technically. But I have no money, no connections, no identity except the one federal prosecutors built for me in court." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out when you burn your entire life down, there's nothing left to stand on." Seraphina sipped her coffee. "You could rebuild." "As what? A killer with a conscience? A reformed criminal? I don't know how to be anything except what I was. And I can't be that anymore." Silence stretched between them. The ocean filled it with white noise. "Why did you really come here?" Seraphina asked. Roman turned to face her. "To tell you the truth. All of it. The parts I left out during testimony. I've heard enough truth. I'm tired of truth. This is important." Roman's voice was urgent. "When you called me 6 months ago, I didn't answer because Victor told me to. I answered because..." He stopped. "Because my sister called me at 3 a.m. once, 14 years ago. She was in trouble, being hurt by someone. And I didn't answer. I was on an operation, too busy, too important." Seraphina's chest tightened. "Roman, she died that night. The person hurting her killed her. And I spent 14 years telling myself it wasn't my fault. That I couldn't have saved her. That answering one phone call wouldn't have changed anything." He met her eyes. "But when you called, when you sounded like someone trying very hard not to drown alone, I heard her voice. And I answered. Because I couldn't save her, but maybe I could save you." Tears were streaming down Seraphina's face. She didn't wipe them away. "So no," Roman continued. "It wasn't part of Victor's plan. It wasn't strategy. It was me trying to fix something I broke 14 years ago, trying to prove I could actually protect someone instead of just killing the people who hurt them after it's too late." "Did it work?" Seraphina's voice cracked. "Did protecting me fix what happened to your sister?" "No, nothing fixes that." Roman's smile was sad, but it gave me something I didn't have before, a reason to want to be better than what I was. Seraphina set down her coffee, walked to the railing, stood beside him, close enough to feel his body heat, far enough to maintain distance. "I don't know how to forgive you," she said quietly, "for the lies, for Prague, for being exactly what you are. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Then what are you asking for? Roman considered permission to exist in the same world as you, without being your enemy, without being your protector, he gestured vaguely, just existing, nearby, in case you ever need someone who understands what it's like to survive becoming something you don't recognize. Seraphina looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd saved her life, who'd lied to her, who'd burned his entire empire down when he could have walked away clean. I'm not ready to trust you, she said. I know. And I don't know if I ever will be. That's fair. But, she paused. You can stay. For coffee. Just coffee. And we can figure out what comes after that later. Roman's expression cracked. Relief. Gratitude. Something deeper she didn't have words for. Just coffee, he agreed. They stood there on the terrace, watching the sun climb higher. Two people who'd been destroyed and rebuilt into something new. Something undefined. Something that didn't have a name yet. Eventually, Seraphina went inside to pour another cup. Roman stayed on the terrace, staring out at the ocean. And for the first time in 17 years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about surviving it long enough to deserve a different future. 6 months later, Seraphina stood in front of a crowd of 200 people. The venue was a converted warehouse in downtown Blackthorn. Exposed brick, industrial lighting, young faces looking up at her with hope and skepticism in equal measure. This was the third location of the foundation she'd quietly launched with money from legal settlements. The Buried Alive Foundation. Resources for people escaping abusive relationships with financially powerful partners. Legal support. Housing. Therapy. Everything she'd wished existed when she was drowning. Celia stood at the back of the room, camera recording for the foundation's website. Roman wasn't there. He'd moved to Seattle, found work doing security consulting for nonprofits. They texted sometimes, careful messages about weather and coffee, building something that might eventually become friendship, or might stay exactly this, two people orbiting each other at a safe distance. Seraphina stepped up to the microphone. My name is Seraphina Vale. 3 years ago, I was convinced I was losing my mind. My husband told me I was paranoid. My therapist told me I needed medication. My lawyers told me I was being emotional, and I believed them. Because that's what happens when everyone in your life tells the same lie. The room was silent. It took 6 months, federal prosecutors, and almost dying several times to prove I wasn't crazy. That the gaslighting was real. That the abuse was real. That I had been systematically destroyed by someone who claimed to love me. She paused. But most people don't have federal prosecutors. Most people don't have investigative journalists willing to risk their careers. Most people just have themselves. She looked out at the crowd, saw her own desperation reflected in their faces. This foundation exists because you shouldn't need to be exceptional to survive. You shouldn't need to collect evidence or build a case or become a media story. You should just need to be believed. Seraphina's voice was steady, strong. So, if you're here tonight because someone convinced you that you're the problem, because someone used their power to make you doubt your own reality, I want you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are being systematically destroyed by someone who profits from your silence. A woman in the front row was crying. And if you're here because you want to help people like me, people like us, then understand. This isn't charity. This is war. A quiet war fought in courtrooms and therapy sessions and bank accounts. A war where the battlefield is someone's sanity and the weapon is doubt. She leaned into the microphone. But we can win it. One person at a time. One story at a time. One survivor at a time. The applause started small, then grew, then became thunder. Seraphina stepped away from the microphone. Let someone else take over. Slipped out the back door into the alley where she could breathe. Celia found her 10 minutes later. That was incredible, Celia said. The board is already talking about expanding to 3 more cities. Good. You okay? Seraphina thought about it. Really thought. Was she okay? Grant was in prison. Victor was in prison. Roman was in Seattle, rebuilding himself piece by piece. The empire that had tried to destroy her was dismantled. She had her foundation, her voice, her freedom. But at night, she still woke up gasping. Still heard Grant's voice telling her she was unstable. Still felt Victor's hands moving chess pieces with her life. Survival, she was learning, wasn't a destination. It was a daily choice, a constant negotiation with trauma that never fully left. "I don't know if I'm okay," Seraphina admitted, "but I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm building something that matters. Maybe that's the same thing." Celia smiled. "Maybe it is." They stood in the alley, two women who'd fought impossible battles and somehow walked away standing, not unscathed, never unscathed, but standing. 1 year after the trial, Seraphina received a letter. It arrived at the Foundation's main office. Plain envelope, no return address, just her name written in careful script. She opened it alone in her office, door closed, hands shaking slightly. Inside was a single page, handwritten. "Seraphina, I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't expect forgiveness or understanding or anything except what you've already given me, the chance to spend my remaining years trying to be better than what I was. I'm writing because I want you to know something. When I first met you, I saw a problem to be solved, a variable to be controlled, a tool to be used. I didn't see a person. That was my greatest sin. Not the gaslighting or the manipulation or the medication, but the fundamental refusal to see you as human, as real, as worthy of existing outside my narrative. I've spent this year in prison trying to understand how I became someone who could do that to another person. Therapy helps. Time helps. But mostly I just sit with the knowledge that I destroyed someone I claimed to love because it was easier than examining my own failures. I don't know if I'll ever truly be better. Prison doesn't fix people. It just gives them time to sit with what they've done. And what I've done is unforgivable. But I wanted you to know you were right about everything, about me, about Victor, about the system that enabled us. You were right, and I was wrong, and I will spend every remaining day of my life trying to prevent other men from making the same mistakes I did. I hope you found peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't require burning everything down to achieve. You deserve better than me, better than Victor, better than all of it. I'm sorry I couldn't be that for you." Seraphina read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, placed it in a locked drawer in her desk. She didn't cry, didn't feel rage, didn't feel vindication, just emptiness. The kind that came from closure that didn't actually close anything, from apologies that couldn't undo damage, from watching someone finally understand what they'd done when it was far too late to matter. She sat in her office for a long time after that, staring out the window at Blackthorn City, the place she'd almost died, the place she'd been reborn. Her phone buzzed. "Roman, coffee tomorrow? I'm in town for work. No pressure." Seraphina stared in the message. Thought about saying no. Thought about saying yes. Thought about all the complicated space between those two options. Finally, she typed, "Sure, noon, the place by the waterfront." His response came immediately. "See you there." She set the phone down, looked at Grant's letter one more time, then locked the drawer and walked out of her office. Tomorrow she'd have coffee with a killer who'd saved her life. Yesterday she'd read an apology from the man who'd tried to destroy it. Today she'd go home. Sleep. Wake up. Keep building, because that's what survival meant. Not winning, not healing completely, not achieving some perfect resolution where everyone got what they deserved. Just waking up. Breathing. Choosing to keep going even when every cell in your body screamed to give up. That was the real victory. Not the trial. Not the headlines. Not the foundation or the speeches or the public vindication. The victory was in the small daily choice to exist, to refuse to be buried, to refuse to disappear, to refuse to let them win by destroying yourself after they'd already tried. Seraphina locked the foundation office and walked out into the Blackthorn evening. The city sparkled around her, dangerous and beautiful and indifferent to her pain, but she was still here, still standing, still fighting, and that, finally, was enough. Epilogue. 2 years after the trial, Seraphina sat on the same terrace where Roman had found her. Morning coffee. Ocean crashing below. The ritual she'd built to remind herself she was alive. The foundation had expanded to 12 cities. They'd helped 300 people escape abusive situations. trained 2,000 lawyers in financial abuse tactics, changed legislation in 4 states. Grant was still in prison, up for parole in 8 years. She didn't think about him often anymore. When she did, it was with the same distant neutrality she'd give any historical figure who'd once destroyed her but no longer had power. Victor had died in federal prison 6 months ago. Heart attack. Nobody mourned him. The empire he'd built continued collapsing. Federal investigators were still making arrests. Roman lived in Seattle. They had coffee every few months when his work brought him to Blackthorn. The conversations were easier now, less loaded. They talked about books and weather and the mundane details of trying to build normal lives from the ashes of extraordinary trauma. She didn't love him, probably never would. Too much history, too many lies, too much blood. But she didn't hate him either. He existed in that complicated space between enemy and friend, between the person who'd saved her and the person who'd used her, between redemption and damnation. And that was okay. Because life, Seraphina had learned, wasn't about neat categories. It was about surviving in the gray spaces, about building meaning from chaos, about refusing to be defined by the worst thing that ever happened to you. She set down her coffee, walked to the edge of the terrace, stared out at the endless ocean. Somewhere in Blackthorn City, people were waking up to abusive partners, to gaslighting, to systematic destruction of their sanity. The work wasn't over, would never be over. But today, 300 people were breathing free because of what she'd built from her own destruction. And that, finally, meant something. Seraphina Vale smiled. Not because she was happy, not because she'd won, not because the story had a neat ending, but because she'd survived. And survival, beautiful, brutal, imperfect survival, was the greatest revenge of all.